Anyone who can't stay to get to their agenda item? Seeing none, we'll move right along. I'd like to announce that we had an executive session immediately preceding this meeting on April 8th, 2013, during which we discussed litigation, personnel, and real estate matters. Next, we are going to approve the minutes from the December 17th, 2012 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
All right. Any commissioner comment? Staff comment? Public comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0. Next, we have a recognition of a past member of a board, and tonight we are going to honor Joe Ritz, who served on our Parks and Recreation Board, and John Nagel is going to present a certificate to him.
Tonight we're honoring Dr. Joseph Ritz in recognition of his outstanding service on the Parks and Rec Board. I had the privilege many years ago of serving on that board with Joe, and a lot of meetings, a lot of hours put in, and a lot of volunteer time over and above the meetings from what I remember. So I just wanted to make sure you got recognized for that, and thank you very much again for your time.
Well, thank you. And if I just may, I'd like to thank the Board of Commissioners for taking time out of their busy agenda tonight, but also for all the support and cooperation that this board, as well as previous ones, have given to Parks and Rec over the years. I will say that I think it's a privilege to serve on our advisory boards. It's an opportunity to give back, but also to learn a lot more about how the township runs and the efforts of staff and volunteer members cooperatively to make Radnor, I think, a unique place in which to live. So I would encourage anyone who is thinking about joining one of our advisory boards to do so. It's a rewarding experience. So thanks again, John, and thank you all.
Thank you, Jeff. And thanks, Joe, for that plug, that recruiting plug for boards and commissions. Next, we are going to introduce a new tool. We're going to try using a consent agenda moving forward. Many times we have numerous items on our agenda that are very perfunctory in nature. They're just doing kind of day-to-day business items where there's really no need for discussion, there's no need for explanation, and rather than go through them one after another, which we have been doing, it's very time-consuming to do that, we're going to put them up front in a consent agenda. Tonight we have just a few items in the consent agenda. We have many items in our agenda that could have gone into this, but as we're just trying this out tonight, we just have a few items in there. The way it works is that someone, or myself, I will introduce the consent agenda and ask if there is anyone on this board who would like to remove anything from the consent agenda. If not, ordinarily we would just move ahead to passing it. While we're introducing this in our community at this level, we are going to also give the public a chance to remove anything from the consent agenda that they feel needs more discussion or explanation or comment. So while in these initial stages, we're going to try both, asking commissioners and public if there's anything in there that they would like to remove. If there isn't, we'll just go and you take one vote for everything without discussion on any of the individual items. If something does get removed, we would vote on the rest of the items and then take that removed item afterwards. So tonight's items for the consent agenda are 4 items. One is to receive a motion to receive bids for street light maintenance. One is a motion to authorize bids for a stormwater project on Fairview Road. One is to authorize bids for a dump truck hauling rates, or excuse me, requests for proposals for that. And the last is a motion for authorization to receive bids for a radar message board. Now, we're going to test out this process right away because I am going to request that we remove the stormwater project on Fairview Road just for a brief explanation. So I'm going to ask my colleagues if anybody else would like to remove anything else.
Awesome.
I had a question on A, and I talked to John Rice, and he said I could ask my question without removing it, but based on your explanation, it sounds like I have to remove it to ask my question.
Well, I think if it's a simple question, from what you described to me, Commissioner Higgins, I don't see any harm just in asking that question.
So I don't know how you want me to ask
Ask
my
the
question
question.
now?
Ask the question.
So Steve, what was the logic behind going from a 2-year bid on the streetlight maintenance to a 1-year with an option?
Commissioner Higgins, and I think Commissioner Nagel touched on this at the previous meeting. If we are unhappy with the performance of our street light contractor, even though there are mechanisms in the bid package and in the bonding to have them removed, that can be a long process and it can take the length of the contract to do. In this way, we have a contractor for 1 year. If we are unhappy with their performance, then my request to the board would be to go to bid. If they performed in a fine fashion, again, my next request would be that we keep them. So I think it streamlines us, but it does not tie us to a single contractor for any length of time.
Do you have a mechanism for monitoring whether we're getting higher bids because of the uncertainty the contractor's taking on?
What we'll see is the 1 and 2 year bid. You'll see the first year bid and a second year bid. Some contractors will hold them the same, others will have an increase. So we'll be able to see then and there on the bid tally sheet where we stand.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda with item B removed?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
And we were not going to take comments. So all in favor, say aye.
Well, I'm going to ask the public if they want to go.
No, that's not with the consent agenda,
Oh, that's what you said.
right?
You said we asked the public if they want to remove anything from the
Oh,
consent
okay.
agenda.
Is there any member of the public that would like to remove any other item? Thank you for that. Okay, so all those in favor of the consent agenda without B?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0. And item B, Steve, can you give a brief explanation about this expenditure, potential expenditure?
I can, and I'm also going to maybe have Ryan Cummins, who's our stormwater engineer, is here, and he might be able to give some further background, because I think it predates all of us. But in short, there is an issue uphill, so to speak, of the property on Fairview. And I'm going to say that dates back some 7-odd years ago on a grading permit that was issued by the township. And this other property is encountering stormwater issues in part because of that permit that we approved. This project is to alleviate those issues that the folks on Fairview are now experiencing.
So if I understand you correctly, Steve, the fact that we issued the permit and the property owner whose property is causing the water to run down to the other properties built consistent with what we approved, it's now our obligation to address the issue. Is that a fair characterization?
Somewhat. So we did approve a grading permit, and it was built, from the best we can tell, in accordance with that grading permit. And perhaps there's something else that could have been done, or an adjustment that could have been made in that process, which was not. And we're actually in a different situation now, because the original homeowners who obtained the permit no longer even live in the house. So somebody that moved in 1 or 2 years ago is in the house that's causing the problem, so to speak, has no idea of the history that's going on.
What's perplexing, my explanation would have made me more satisfactory, but you kind of waffled a little bit. Why isn't it the property owner who's causing the problem's responsibility to pay for it? Why is it the township's responsibility to pay for it?
Maybe I can answer that one for you, Kevin, because the township erred in approving the plan.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I have a few questions. I'll start with, what was the error? Steve, do you know what the error was? So, I mean, the nature of it is, one, do we know that this will work? Second, why this project? Because there are a host of projects that are applicable or worthy. And then why not in the capital plan? And then if it is, as I understood Steve explained it, are we opening Pandora's box if we have an approved plan and it's causing a stormwater problem then we're going to have many, many more of these. So why this particular one?
I think as part of this, Don, there's a high level of litigation facing the township on this one. And maybe, Ryan, if you want to step in and maybe address a few of the concerns I think Commissioner Curley brought up too, I think he'd be able to answer some of these for you. But there is that high potential that that's going to sit here on this.
Hello, Ryan. Welcome.
Good evening. Yes.
I'm going to pull that mic for you.
Sorry. And I don't know all of the events that led up to it. My understanding is that a permit was issued. It caused water to flow in a new direction. That's at the subject house, which is downhill. This project is a way to divert the water around that downstream home to alleviate the problem. Without going back to the particular plan and permit and looking at that, I don't have that information directly in front of me at this time.
I can add a little, I hope a little to this. I spoke with Ryan Cummings today. I spoke with Steve Norsini. I also spoke to the property owner at 27 Fairview because I was really intrigued about the fact that we're now facing a $90,000 expense here for what looks to be a private problem. What I learned is this. There's nobody left in the township that really knows what happened here. The director of public works is gone. The township engineer is gone. Township manager is gone. What I do know is that the property owner has sought relief from this problem for 8 years. And it's a serious problem. There's a tremendous amount of water flows onto her property, their property. They've had 2 complete washouts. Why this happened, I'm not sure. Don, you're probing there. I assume that the permit that was issued had plans that were not fully analyzed by our staff at the time. If they were, they would have, I assume, would have understood that the way the permit was, the way the plans were proposed or presented would result in the damage that has resulted. Can we go after the prior property owner? Well, we're going back 2 property owners from the current family, the Packer family. The current property owner, that's where the water is coming from, has no knowledge, had no knowledge when they closed on their property of this problem. Could we go back after the contractor? I don't know. We've got a 4-year or 6-year statute of limitations on construction in Pennsylvania. I'm not, well, that's our solicitor's job to opine on that. So I'm not very sanguine about going anywhere on this. And I was kind of up in the air, but listening to the tale of woe that Mrs. Packer told me today, she's been asking for 8 years to get this resolved, to get help. And I think, to summarize, that it's a township's problem because the township's representatives, our agents, did not adequately review the grading permit when it was submitted.
Well, let me, in the interest of moving this along, we tonight would be voting to get bids on it. We're not committing to the project.
That's correct, Commissioner.
So we would get some bids, get an idea of the scope and the how much it's going to cost. Then it would come up again in front of us again to approve the project.
To award that to a specific contractor.
And at that point, I mean, maybe between now and then, we can try and do a little bit more investigating and really try to discern what makes this particular project and private home problem our responsibility.
I think Commissioner Higgins did hit on one item. If we were to go back to the original homeowner or the original contractor, their response would be, we built this to the specifications of an approved plan. Why are you coming to us? You approved this plan. What we'll do is have to try to find that plan and do some additional investigation, but I think really that's what it comes down to. Something was built with our blessing, and that issue has now caused problems for someone downstream.
Okay. Well, would someone like to move that we receive these, that we solicit these bids, and we will put off for now the decision on whether we'll actually go ahead with this project?
Can I ask John Rice a question? John, Don's question about this being precedent setting is I think, an intriguing and an important one. Because we issue permits all the time, and we've had people here from Willow complaining about what's happening there.
But
I don't need an answer tonight.
Yeah.
But I'd like to understand the potential ramifications of if this was built, if it was approved, and we legitimately approved it, and it was built in accordance with plan, what are the consequences of this on a wider range?
Well, we do issue permits all over the township, but I know a little bit about this situation. Township had some active involvement with this early on, and that plan, and the plan didn't work. I mean, that's, basically what happened. I think there was an effort to help somebody out with the stormwater problem, and it didn't help at all.
The property owner that's causing the problem, the property owner being affected?
Property owner causing the problem downstream. And
I know you said, Bob said there may be potential litigation, so I don't want to.
yeah,
If you're dancing around that, we can certainly have this conversation.
yeah, we can
on
talk
under a
about
potential
this
litigation
outside of the meeting, but this is a situation that I actually was involved with early on, probably in '09, and I'm a little bit familiar with what went on out there, and I think it was an effort to fix something that didn't go right. And now I think the township's got the responsibility to try to correct what's going on out there.
And Ryan, is it your opinion that this fix will solve the problem? This isn't one of those dilemmas where, we'll spend a lot of money and improve it by 10%. Is this a near 100% solution?
Yeah, we believe this will not only divert water, but also capture water that comes and take it around the structure. Yes.
And the error was not an MPDS violation. It was simply there was an alternative that was preferable, and we didn't identify
I don't believe that
the
there was
best-
any type of violation
Yes,
involved.
we didn't
I think.
identify the best alternative.
That's correct.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, the motion was made by Bill. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
And I have another question, is rather than us paying to do the work, wouldn't it make more sense to have the homeowner do the work and we'll reimburse them up to some limit that we establish?
Yes.
That's an alternative.
I think that's a very good suggestion.
Have the property owner hire their own contractor,
Yeah.
but you still need to get a,
But we could get these
number.
bids.
You
We
need to
could
get
go
a
out for
number,
these
so-
bids and that would set our max.
You're right, because this will be it's over $25,000, so it will be a prevailing wage project, which right there is going to increase the cost.
Right.
So let's do that. Let's go out
Get
for.
the bids and then try
Right.
and set up an alternate funding.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
but should we just bypass us getting the bids and simply?
No,
ask-
how do we establish our cap?
Well, number one is the property owner that is benefiting by us doing this is not able to do the work. It's not on their property. How about the other person decides we don't want to do it? That's why the township has to do it, because it's work on somebody else's property to help someone downstream.
No.
No.
This is on,
The work's going to be on Packer's property.
Yeah, but there is it would simplify the project somewhat if an easement from yet a third property owner
Well,
could
we
be
can
acquired.
certainly work on that.
Okay, let's go ahead and, is there any more commissioner comment on this? Is there any other staff comment?
Yeah, we just get the
Any
bids.
public comment? Okay.
Gail Morrison, 111 Poplar. Could you just specify what's in the bid? What are you asking for? What are the specs on the project?
It involves doing some mounding as well as trenching along the back of the residence to install a drainage trench and pipe to collect water, take it around one side of the home and out to the street to connect into an existing storm sewer.
Okay.
John, will we get a release that, whether or not, okay.
All right, any other public comment? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes 7-0. All right, well, that was a very clumsy first attempt at our consent agenda, but I promise we will improve. On to an update from Chagrin Valley Engineering on our stormwater management system at North Wayne Field. Ryan,
All right.
where are you again?
Thank you very much. What was this? There we go.
I'll just say one thing. Joe Ritz You don't have to stay the whole meeting just because we gave you a award. You've been in many meetings. You can leave anytime you want. You can leave anytime you want. You've been in many meetings. You don't just go. All right.
All right. All right. Thank you. I am Ryan Cummins with Chagrin Valley Engineering, here to give you an update of some of the work that we've been undertaking at the direction of the township, not only at North Wayne Park, but we've also done some investigative work at the AT&T facility, the Church of the Savior, as well as creating a plan for Okay. We're going to start, sorry about that. We're going to start with North Wayne Park. The park is the home of a current existing stormwater management system, has a history of being overwhelmed and contributing to flooding downstream. A lot of this information is the same information that we presented back last year. At the time, we only had developed options. We were under the directive to develop options utilizing the entire park. And that's what was presented at that meeting. Based on the public comment and some of the feedback that we received, we were asked to develop some other options to try and leave some of the core uses of the park in place. And so that's one of the things that we've done. Okay. Existing conditions at the park. This is a slide that we had before. Shows that there is a existing 3x3 culvert coming under the railroad tracks. The drainage area is approximately 41 acres that comes through that culvert into the park and into the existing stormwater management system. Some things to keep in mind. There's a concern at the Poplar Avenue, quite a bit of home structural flooding there. Things to keep in mind, and we pointed this out before, the drainage area that goes to North Wayne Field is approximately 8% of what comes to Poplar in the Gulf Creek watershed. Whatever, if any option is chosen to be implemented at North Wayne Field, it should be looked at as an incremental improvement, not a solution for the issues at Poplar. There is the drainage area coming to Poplar is approximately 600 acres. And this is a blow-up of the area that comes to North Wayne Field, again showing a total of 41.2 acres, I believe. The existing stormwater management system was constructed in the 1990s. There was previously just above ground only. This currently is an underground as well as above ground. Has just over 1.1 acre feet of storage, accepts drainage from approximately 46 acres. That includes the park area as well as the area that comes through the culvert. And we indicate that it's overtopped with less than a 2-year storm. And it does not provide any water quality features. It was constructed before those requirements were in place. All of the options include the complete removal of the existing system. In the presentation, I've left the options that show the use of the entire park. The existing system would be removed. The existing system, remember, had 1.1 acre. If we were to use the park, we could generate up to 19 acre feet of storage. The first two options connect to the existing storm sewer that leaves the park. The rest of the options would require the installation of a new storm sewer, separate storm sewer system to carry the drainage away. And due to space limitations and the size of the drainage area coming to the park, none of the options would fully comply with the current water quality standards and would require some amount of waivers on various aspects of those permits.
Why is that, Ryan?
The drainage area coming in is just too large for what we could handle in that size of site. We have certain requirements based on the volume of water coming in for water quality, and we just can't meet that requirement with that size of footprint.
It's volume rather than
That's correct.
bad water.
That's correct.
Okay.
Again, the first three options use the entire park. This is what we had shown before. First option, 14.2 acre feet. Second option, we use the entire park, but we also have a wet storage area. We get up to the 18.6 acre feet. Again, this has the wet option, but then we kick in with the auxiliary storm sewer leaving the park. After that last meeting, as I said, we wanted to, what else can we do? If we want to keep the park, keep the character of the park, one option is to kind of replace the existing system in kind instead of it having be underground and above ground. Kind of dig out the underground section and have that all be open. You would pick up the volume of the stone and the earth in that area. That takes us from the 1.1 acre feet existing up to 2.1. Basically allows for the use of the park as it is now. No set measurement to the baseball diamond. Gets us up to the 5-year storm with the addition of the auxiliary storm sewer. We go to the next option, call option E. We set the baseball field at a 250-foot field and included in the project, the installation of a fence there. And then we kind of maximize that area outside of that and up along it to create a dry detention basin. Again, no underground component. Gets us up to about the 10-year storm, around $600,000.
Will you remind us what a dry basin is?
Sure. Dry detention basin means that the water comes there during a rain event, stays for a little while, and then drains out completely. So on a day like today, you would see a grassed area. But on a rainy day, that may fill up and it would look like a pond.
So a dry basin is in contrast to a wet basin.
Yes. A wet basin we would call a retention basin. A dry basin we would call a detention basin. Just like if you get in trouble at school, you have to serve a detention and then you get to go home. A dry detention basin, the water stays for a little bit and then it goes away.
And the wet stays permanently and
then you would have
infiltrates?
with a wet basin, you would have a permanent pool, and then you would store water above that permanent pool.
Okay.
And then the final option we have is the same basic footprint as the fifth option, but instead of having grass slopes, we had the idea of installing a vertical concrete retaining wall, so that instead of the sides sloping down to the bottom of the basin, you would have a vertical. Again, that allows more storage. We get up to 5.6 acre feet. Also dramatically increases the estimated cost. Does get you up to about a 25-year storm. But what's not shown here is you would greatly increase your life cycle costs because you would have the maintenance and replacement costs of that wall going forward. So we believe that those options kind of run the gamut of totally using the area for stormwater management instead of a park, to having a balance of having the park functions as well as doing what you can with stormwater management. And we've generated costs for each of those, and as well as modeled their impact on with stormwater management calculation numbers, and all of that has been given to the administration. Okay. The next item we've done some work on is looking at the AT&T facility. Lies between West Avenue and Lancaster. It's about a 5.8 acre facility. The northern parking area which would be up here, lies just along the train tracks and West Avenue, and that's about 1.8 acres. And then the southern parking area is down here, and that's about 1.3 acres. As I said, about 2.4 acres of that drains northward towards towards the train tracks, which then goes under the culvert, which this would be North Wayne Field right up here. So part of that does drain that way. And there was concern, well, what can be done to maybe lessen the impact of that? And we haven't gotten had a lot of interaction, been able to have a lot of interaction with the owner, AT&T. So what I have to report is somewhat limited. I will say that there was an idea of doing some either stormwater detention, stormwater management area right here along the train tracks. I don't believe that is advisable for the reasons that one, the area relative to the drainage area that's coming to it is rather small. I don't think you'd get a lot of bang for your buck. And then you'd be storing water again between the slope for the train tracks and the existing AT&T structures. And you can negatively impact both. The AT&T structures with their operation. With the train tracks, you could destabilize their slope and the soils there and may cause some issues. And anything, if we're able to work out with the property owner about doing any type of retrofit, obviously they'll want to see that it's compatible with their property uses. Some of the things that come to mind that could be implemented, if it would work, is green roofs. They do provide both water quality and some measure of stormwater management. Also, energy conservation. I think the owner could get some benefit out of that. We give a weight range. There's several different types, but weight range is 10 to 50 pounds per square foot. But you would not be storing all the cars there, so you would have some offset of that. But still, until we have some interaction with the management there, we're not certain what the structural capabilities would be. And this is just an example of a cross-section of a green roof. You have the different soil plant layers, growing media, soil layers, and then down to the waterproofing membrane underneath. Also, things that could be done in certain areas, micro-detention, rain gardens, landscape parking islands, small gardens. We need about 9,000 square feet to treat an acre for water quality. And this is more of a water quality type improvement. You would get a little bit of volume control, but the main focus would be water quality. Bioretention, kind of the next step up, excellent way of removing suspended solids, heavy metals, and the like. I think maybe the southern property parking area could be suitable for that, but we would need some more information to really determine that. And then this is an example of what one of those may look like. This cross section would lie here. You would have some amount of storage of water during rain events from the top of the soil, from the mulch media to a point that it would pour over into usually a control structure and then out to a storm sewer. But during smaller events, the water enters, goes down through the media. That's where that excellent uptake of or separation of heavy metals, et cetera, comes out, goes down to a pipe at the bottom, and then goes out as cleaner water. Church of the Savior, and I just saw this at the last minute. I apologize up front for misspelling Savior, and it was too late to change. We were provided copies of plans and calculations that Radnor Township had on file. We completed a review of those, and we do have some additional questions. We're not certain that we have all of the information that may be available, and we've reached out to the adjacent township to have those conversations. But in general, we're seeking to work cooperatively with them. I think there's just a lot of Radnor residents have just some general questions. They see that campus and the improvements that were done maybe over the past decade, and just want to make sure that everything was done according to plan. And so we'd like to get those answers and convey that back. But that's an ongoing process at this point. And then the last issue would be the Upper Gulf Creek. You're asked to develop kind of a conceptual plan. You know, in the stormwater report that we did a couple years ago, we made mention of that if you really wanted to, in that particular area, get rid of the structural flooding issue, you would have to remove some of the structures. And so we kind of advanced that thought another step and came up with a conceptual plan. First off, I'd just like to point out this is, here would be North Wayne Field. This would be Poplar here. I believe that would be Eagle up there. And this cross-hatched area, the red, that is the existing FEMA-designated floodplain. And you see how that overlays with the neighborhood and impacts a number of the residents along the way. So we took that and came up with a plan that if you were to take all of those structures out of harm's way, you would have a pretty sizable area that then could be reused for not only stormwater management but also it would be a community amenity as well. What we've shown here is maintaining the cross streets but enlarging the culverts at each of the crossings so that the flow goes unabated. But then in taking the stream channel to a more natural type configuration, and then in areas adjacent to it, creating some floodplain wetland areas to help spread the water out, slow it down, let it soak in. We've also shown a pedestrian path that would tie up to Cowan Park here and run along the edge of that as well. In total, 3,625 linear feet of stream restoration, 3,335 linear feet of gravel path. We'd be creating over 7 acres of wetlands. There'd be 106 parcels impacted, and 79 structures would have to be removed. And then we also provided and it's difficult to read here, but examples of this was provided to the administration. Some cross sections showing kind of the existing grade and where some of the structures are, but then also how the new wetland areas and floodplain areas would lay out and their relation to the adjacent streets. So with that, I know you have a long agenda, but I'm happy to take any questions that anyone may have. If there's anything in particular you'd like to talk about.
So these projects that you identified as D, E, and F.
Yes.
The A, B, and C, I don't think satisfied cost benefit of this board, and my sense is that these will be marginal. Well, they will be as less effective as they are inexpensive, meaning that
yes.
The cost, on the last one, A, B, and C, we were talking about 6 and 7% of peak flows.
Yes.
And here you're going to be talking about 2 and 3% or half of 2 and 3%.
Yes.
So very small reductions. And then the water quality measures that you identified, they're not going to have any appreciable impact on flooding. Correct?
That's correct. The water quality is strictly.
So those that want.
Not to say that we couldn't do some measure of water quality. We have areas. Let me get to the right slide here.
But the sensitivity of those water quality interventions is such that, for all intents and purposes, they will have no impact Those that have water in their basement, we can spend
They don't-
millions
they
of
don't-
dollars on these improvements, and
They
they're
don't
still
really
going to
care
have
about
water
water
in their
quality at
basement.
that time, no.
And then last, did we give consideration to, instead of trying to go smaller, trying to go bigger and turning this into a 10-year project with EPA and state money with some kind of interceptor in North Wayne Avenue? Because my sense is that's the only way you're going to get significant relief.
Yeah.
It is not by combining $300,000 projects. No amount of those is going to make sense. But one
Yeah.
$15 million project that takes us a decade to get.
No,
that
we did
somebody else
not look at that option other than looking at kind of the extreme in that direction. And if you want to get rid of the problem, here's what you have to do. You would have to be removing these structures.
Yeah, but you
and
could,
purchasing
an
these
alternative
properties.
to $58 million could be a very expensive, publicly funded interceptor project.
It could.
that
It could.
provides
There
that
was a project proposed, if I recall, in the 1970s by the Army Corps of Engineers, basically creating a concrete channel that was maybe like 15 by 7 to convey up through the 100-year storms.
Underneath North Wayne Avenue?
It was proposed at that time to be an open channel, kind of like when I read it, kind of reminiscent of Los Angeles, kind of those big concrete drainage ways. Could you do some sort of interceptor? I would say yes. If you go that route, would you be able to convey through the 100-year storm? That would be very, I would say yes as well, but it would be very expensive. Is there some measured, if you go that route, could you maybe handle through the 10 or 25? Would that be more doable, potentially? But the short answer, we did not look at that
Right,
option.
and it would likely be considerably cheaper than the $58 million.
It could be cheaper, yes. But it depends on how, if you get into having to bore or tunnel or something like that, it could come into line very quickly.
Either one of you tell us what an interceptor is?
It would just be having a second auxiliary large pipe to collect the water and convey it to a certain point. So you would still have the stream. The stream would go as it does now. It'd have some amount of base flow in it. But if you had a large storm, the water would be diverted into an auxiliary large conduit of some sort and conveyed downstream to a certain point.
Are we talking about the water coming from North Wayne Field, or are we talking about the water coming from the 600 acres
Be the
above
600 acres.
above Poplar Avenue?
Yes.
So my sense is the only practical alternative is something like that underground in the street, big state project, big federal project.
Going where?
I'm envisioning it running along the length of North Wayne Avenue and just collecting. I mean, it would be very, very long.
But where does it go?
It stays in the pipe and then is released gradually.
You would, yeah, I mean, where it ends would be a very key question. You'd have to start looking at elevations and the like to see how deep you need to be to get under things, and then where that gets you to coming out on the low end. But that is a very key question. I would say that once you get past Cowan Park, I think you do start picking up some elevation in the stream. You might be able to outlet down in that area, just as a rough guess.
I have trouble imagining that being cheaper than $58 million. You have all that infrastructure in North Wayne Avenue that has to be picked up, moved to the side, gently put back in place and connected.
The sort of thing I'm envisioning is a very, very large pipe in the street. So it's a huge project.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. But I would be surprised if it would be $58 million. You're not going to do it underneath people's houses. So it's the streets themselves, which the streets follow that grade. They are the natural location where the water flows, I mean, roughly. And then you put huge pipes underneath the street, and it serves as a detention basin and a conduit at the same time.
Well, I'm going to intervene here in the interest of moving us along. I think we all appreciate this update, and we all are very happy to have this information. We're not obviously making any decisions tonight. For everyone's information, I believe on the 22nd we'll be hearing from our stormwater management, AMAC, the consultants who are guiding us in how we're going to figure out a way to fund these projects like these. And this project will go in the hopper with all the other projects that we
Yes.
have going on, and this is great information to have going into that process.
Okay.
So thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, next we have another presentation. This one, changing gears a bit, is about geese management. And I believe we have Officer Bill Gallagher here to guide us in this discussion. You're getting really good at these wildlife management presentations.
I'm starting to be, I'm an expert on deer. I am not an expert on geese.
They're much smaller.
Yes, they are. Okay. Again, I am Bill Gallagher, and I work for the Township, and I'm in charge of animal control. I have been charged with finding a remedy for the geese problems that we were having, so here we go. First of all, there are currently 231,780 birds estimated in Pennsylvania, and they can be observed in every county. There are approximately 1 million resident Canada geese in the Atlantic Flyway, and more reside here in Pennsylvania, and some people think Radnor, than any other state. In the northeastern United States, the resident goose population has increased threefold between 1990 and 1999. There is a legal status. Canada geese are migratory game birds, and they're afforded federal and state protection. The populations are managed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, along with the Pennsylvania Game Commission. And as you can see on the slide, the Pennsylvania statutes, game code, and other federal and state laws, regulations, policies, and rulings. Pretty bird. But why have these geese lost their biological impulse to migrate? Well, quite simply, the Canada goose has learned that the environment created by humans was much closer to a goose paradise than they would ever get in Canada. The extreme cold and heavy snows in Canada just became too much, so they just chose to stay, thereby becoming resident geese. Geese start breeding at 2 to 3 years of age and nest every year for the rest of their lives. They mate for life, but if one dies, the other will mate again. They lay an average of 5 eggs per nest and may re-nest if the first attempt fails. One goose can produce more than 50 young over her entire lifetime. And once the pair is bred, they'll select a suitable site to nest. If you've ever been around the willows around that pond, the area is usually close to shallow water, vegetation. To conceal the female, she incubates the eggs. The pair will become very aggressive if anyone gets close. In late February or March, adult pairs return to their breeding grounds. Egg laying and incubation run through April, with the peak of hatching in late April or early May, so we're right here right now. During this period, juvenile geese will often remain nearby and feed in flocks. After nesting, geese undergo an annual molt. It's a 4 to 5 week flightless period. They actually shed and regrow their feathers. Molting occurs from mid-June to July, and most birds can fly again around August. After the molt and through the fall, resident geese gather into very large flocks, usually at the willows, and spend most of their time grazing and pond hopping. That is the willows. So what's the problem? Commissioner Higgins can tell you. Common concerns related to the overabundant Canada goose population include risks to human health and safety, damage to residential, agricultural, commercial, and public property, along with the degradation of the natural resources. The majority of goose damage complaints in Pennsylvania and Radnor involve the accumulation of feces on lawns and walkways at private homes, schools, hospitals, campuses, and public parks. An average goose deposits 1 pound of feces every day. In that last picture I showed, there was 37 geese in the willows, and that was just driving by. Goose droppings may pose a health threat due to the presence of disease-causing organisms, especially E. coli. And it's not good on the eyes. Large amounts of goose droppings in water bodies severely reduce water qualities and on occasion have caused swimming areas to be closed. Some other safety concerns include slipping on goose droppings and being attacked, like I said, by an aggressive goose. And combative geese are a common occurrence in the spring and may injure adults, kids, or pets that approach the nest too closely. Excessive accumulations of geese droppings physically damage property and make using an area difficult or unpleasant. Cleanup efforts are costly in facilities like a swimming pool and practically impossible in places like a soccer field over the high school, for instance. And grazing geese trample and damage turf and landscape plantings, which impacts aesthetics and creates erosion hazards. So what can be done to discourage the Canada geese legally? It's just like the deer. Reducing the problems associated with Canada geese requires the development of an integrated wildlife management program. It includes a variety of safe, practical, effective, and legal techniques and approaches. You got to start off by a no feeding rule. Stop feeding is necessary and important first step in reducing the goose damage. Geese that are fed by people are difficult or impossible to harass away. They tend to congregate in large numbers, have a higher incidence of disease transmission, and actually may suffer deformities and poor health due to nutritional deficiencies. Domestic ducks and geese. Domestic ducks and geese serve as decoys or attractants for wild waterfowl. Removing all domestic waterfowl is recommended to minimize disease concerns. Also, doing so, it'll help to the extent that the wild waterfowl are attracted to an area and make the enforcement of no feeding that much easier to accomplish.
What's a domestic duck or goose? Is it somebody's
A domestic
pet or
duck
something that's
is
here?
just the regular duck that you see fly in, not the goose. You'll see the domestic ducks in pairs. If you go over the willows, I was there, and there's like 3 ducks that just hang with all these geese.
So they're ducks that sort of stay here. They're not somebody's
Exactly.
in somebody's
Yeah,
yard.
yeah.
They call them mallards.
There you go. Habitat management and exclusion. Habitat modification is considered a long-term management practice and typically involves altering the vegetation and water bodies to reduce the attractiveness to the geese. Habitat management and exclusion techniques aimed at reducing the goose damage will conflict with the intended purpose of the property or negatively impact its aesthetic value. It's like putting a gigantic fence around the pond at the willows. It just doesn't work. Visual deterrence. These techniques are very cost-effective, safe, readily obtainable, quiet, and convenient for both the urban and suburban use, and can be easily implemented with harassment techniques. Habitation, though, to visual deterrence is normal, and they should be moved periodically, as well as integrated with the other techniques. Visual deterrence, like a scarecrow, an owl. Owl's a predator to the geese. You can use mylar tape, flagging, and balloons. Not going to get into each one individually. Kind of get the picture. Also, they have repellents. Chemical repellents are designed to reduce the goose grazing by reducing palatability of the treated vegetation. Repellents are favored by the public because they're not visually detracting and they don't harm the geese permanently. However, they do need to be reapplied at varying frequencies, and they don't prevent the geese from loafing and swimming in a treated area. And the repellents may not be cost effective for the widespread use on private lawns, but applications on smaller, high priority areas may provide some relief. For instance, around, take the willows again, for example, around the picnic tables, if you spray around there, that could help you out. Harassment of geese with pyrotechnics, propane cannons, train dogs, horns, and other devices also is effective in reducing the damage. Again, success depends on the technique, the nature of the problem, the number and habits of the geese that you have, and the timing and how often you're willing to do the harassment. And most important, the best results are obtained when harassment is initiated as soon as the problem is detected. Maybe a little bit past that. Then again, there's population management. This reproduction control can be accomplished through activities such as nest and egg treatments. Depending on the exact damage situation, nests and eggs are either removed and destroyed, or the eggs are treated and returned to the nest. Removal of nests and eggs is typically done when the nests are located in areas of heavy human traffic, entryways, decks, patios, playgrounds, ball fields. The removal of nests is intended to deter the geese from nesting again in the same area. Nest egg removal may need to be conducted repeatedly throughout the nesting season, and we can take that may out. It will have to be conducted repeatedly through the nesting season and over several years. Nest egg treatment entails coating an egg with food oil, which effectively stops the embryo development by preventing air from passing through the shell. There's also ways you can literally pierce the egg, shake the egg. Treated eggs are returned to the nest, and the adult geese will remain attached to the nest, but the goslings won't be hatched. Nest egg treatment is typically done where the current number of geese is tolerable, but you don't want any more. And treatment or removal of eggs will not reduce the overall goose population, but it will slow its growth and make the adult geese, which aren't attached to goslings, that much easier to harass. I have spoken with a couple of groups that actually come out and do this. The USDA I'm very familiar with for the deer, and we spoke at great lengths about geese. And here's what they do. They use an integrative approach which involves nest and egg treatment and removing the goslings. They have population roundups, removing 50% of the population per year. They do harassment throughout the fall and winter. And the Pennsylvania Game Commission only allows roundups to be done starting the third year a cooperator has completed egg and nest treatment and harassment. So they have to go through that for 2 years. A property that the USDA does, if you're familiar with it, is Sacred Heart. You go down Sacred Heart, and it's amazing because there's geese everywhere, and you go to Sacred Heart, and the middle of the field is perfectly clean. They say in the long term what they expect the population to stay constant but not increase due to the treatments. They expect to see geese less frequently and in some cases rarely due to harassment. And they're really big on the harassment, so big that they recommend arming certain township employees who are willing with pyrotechnic starter pistols to assist in the harassment when they're not on site. And then in the longer term, 3 years, expect to see a drastic reduction of geese due to the population roundups. Essentially, up to 50% of the geese will be removed from each property they work on. And this is accomplished during the molt, when they shed their feathers and they literally just put them into a herd and take them away. And then beginning that third year, roundups can be done each summer, which will continue to reduce the large number of geese in the township. And I'd also spoke with Alan Strickler, who is an employee of the Game Commission about how he does it. He actually worked in the township several years ago. And he would accomplish these by implementing a variety of methods, more specifically intermittent use of trained and managed dogs for the harassment of the flock, in combination with visual deterrent devices in any of the pond areas. Literally put stuff in the pond to keep them away. And used audible deterrents to frighten them off by a loud whistling type noise referred to as a screamer, and strategically placed predatory decoys. And last but not least, a permit's no longer required to treat nests, but you still need to obtain authority. You have to register online with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and you could actually do that on your own property if you'd like.
Well, that is more than any of us thought we would ever know about geese control.
It's more than I thought I would ever know as well.
Well, thank you so much for your very thorough presentation here. I would like to make the suggestion that rather than debate what we're going to do tonight with our long agenda, that we send this presentation and all it entails to our Parks and Rec board so they can do a thorough analysis of the options you've presented and what might work best for us in our parks.
Good deal.
Do we have a consensus on that?
Yeah, that makes sense. Just one or two comments.
Sure.
You started out by saying they're protected as migratory birds.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if that's really still true. With all the things,
Actually, yes, it is.
With all the things you can do, including the ultimate, which is Roundup, it's hard to understand how they're still protected.
They never changed that act, apparently, and it's just, I mean, they were near extinction, and now they're everywhere.
And what is the life expectancy of a gosling?
I'm not really sure. I'm not sure.
Because that's helpful to know that when you're talking about reducing at 50%.
I'll find out in the next presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, next on our agenda, we have a discussion of the Willows proposals. And as everyone will recall, we had about a month or so ago, several, 4 proposals, presenters come and make their proposals for their idea for a partnership with the township in running the Willows going forward. We promised to take a look at those in depth and take input from our residents. And tonight we hope to have a very short discussion and narrow that down to some finalists and give a bit of guidance and the next step in the process. So I'm going to go ahead and open up if anybody wants to make a suggestion.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we have the staff work with Conroy Catering and Jeffrey Miller to prepare a final presentation by both those organizations to us, basically their last and final. At our meeting, we have a special meeting on May 2nd, if that's doable, Bob. And then at that time, we'll look at those two, and we'll also expect to have recommendations from staff. And I think we need to also reach out to the community, make sure they know about this so they'll have an opportunity to input.
Second.
Okay.
So, John, would you just summarize those two that you picked?
Conroy Catering / Dale Corporation and Jeffrey Miller Catering and Lake House Inn are the two. They were the two caterers that had facilities that they did rather than the tenting folks.
And one of the distinctions between, there was the third caterer that you didn't select, is that these two would take operation and authority for maintenance, whereas the caterer that you did not select envisioned the township maintaining the building.
In my opinion, the third one, two things. One, they took down the tents in the winter, so it wasn't a year-round thing. The second thing was they did not even begin to address the maintenance, the upkeep, some of the items that we had mentioned in the request for proposals.
Okay, that's a logical division to me. I saw great similarity in those two proposals, and seems reasonable to link them together and ask for more information from those two.
I also agree also that those were the top 2 contenders. They were the most comprehensive and the most responsive to the parameters that we put out there. And those two gave the most gave me the most realistic expectation of long-term success. There are a few items that I want to make sure that both of these groups address when they come back or when they're negotiating with staff over the next 4 weeks. And I'm just going to tick them off very quickly so that the public can hear them and that they can hear them. The first one is that the community group use is very important to me and I think to some of my colleagues. This is a community asset. We're trying to find a partner to help us run it and help us take the burden of it off. But the Willows, the taxpayer have paid for many, many decades, paid for this asset and should continue to get a benefit from it. So I want to make sure that at this final stage of proposal, we get a very clear idea of the community use. And I also want to clarify that community use is not just township use, it's also school district use. That's the way it's used now from both the township and the school district, and use it free of charge. And the second group of residents that use it now for a discount, to me, is a little less important. I mean, I would still like to see some use set aside for a discount for residents on, off peak hours. But there should be a component in these final proposals for free of charge use and off, not busy hours, not off season, but for free of charge use for the township and for the school district.
Are you phrasing that as a requirement or a request?
That's what I would like to see.
A requirement or a request?
In my view, it's a requirement, but I'm one of 7.
Request.
So, that's a negotiation. The second thing, I'd like to get clarification of the tax treatment these people would like to see. There was some mention of real estate taxes in one of them, but we clarify and get straight expectations on both real estate and business privilege tax. The third issue I'd like them both to address is the parking expansion. In particular, on either use is going to include a parking expansion and having that expansion include planting of trees, porous pavement, and some sort of nod towards not just putting plain macadam down. I would like both of the groups to kind of solidify and clarify the gross receipts they're expecting and to see the gross receipts they get from their other venues so that we have an idea when we're figuring out if we're getting some sort of profit sharing over a certain amount, how realistic that is given what they're making in their other venues. And then finally, my last comment is that if we do arrange and agree to some sort of profit sharing over and above a certain amount of revenue, gross revenue per year, I don't view that as I don't view that would be necessary to be put into. That's not a rent payment. I mean, that is not, shouldn't have to be put back into the building. If we can make an agreement that a certain amount of money in one of the proposals, it was $75,000, would be paid and put back into the building, and that's completely legitimate. But the separate component of profit sharing over and above a certain gross revenue, I don't personally think that should be restricted.
Okay. Can I ask a point of clarification, because you said it 4 different times? I think there's a difference between revenue and profit, so I think you're asking for a revenue sharing versus profit sharing, because profit sharing is after they deduct all their expenses. If they're above a certain revenue, it's a revenue sharing. So is that what you're looking for?
The way it was presented to us, it was if they had gross profits over a certain amount, we would.
You have to make sure they understand what you're asking them. There's a difference between revenues and profits.
So those are my points that I would like to see going forward. If any, I encourage anybody else to put their points, or if you're not ready tonight to give them to our management while they're negotiating these 2 offers.
Well, I think they were the only 2 viable alternatives. The other 2, Cross Street Capital, I think made a nice effort but wasn't very clear. Perfect Settings was just basically a broker, booking what we had before. So I think these are the only 2 viable entities, and I think there's enough difference between what Conroy was proposing and Jeffrey Miller that your constraints should be requests or preferences as opposed to requirements, because there's a significant difference between what Conroy was proposing as to the township utilization and what Jeffrey Miller, and I don't think you want to tie their hands. I think you want that to be part of your evaluation process, not a requirement.
I was approached by a builder in the township who's done work for us, and he's done some work on our public properties. And he asked if he could be considered to be part of the review process and discussion process when we get to the point where when we're selecting the final two. And so I mentioned this to Elaine Schaefer today, and it might be valuable, Bob, for us to put the word out to the community to tell them that if they have any interest in steering the proposals to a good level, good direction where we get the best product for our dollars, or if they just have generally a good feeling about participating, that they let you know, and then they could be part of the discussions that you have with the two finalists.
I would stay away from that because I think then we'll get more people involved in this, and this process will take us way out into another area. I think everybody's had the opportunity in this process, actually when it started last year with the Parks Board. But to have individuals now chime in, really, I would say I'd rather have them come in here after the two presentations that are made, the final presentations to the board, and make those comments directly to the board here.
You feel they would clutter things up if they came into your meetings?
I would believe so. And again, I don't know these folks. I don't know where they're coming from, or I have no knowledge about them. But I think it would be best for those individuals to be invited to that meeting on May 2nd then, when these final presentations are made, to actually have that conversation directly with the board and in public.
I agree, especially if it's a builder, because some of these involve construction aspects. And to me, there's a bit of an issue if the builder is too close to the process, that there's sort of a bad incentive.
I would agree that this board made a decision many months ago to appoint the Parks and Rec Board the initial responsibility to review the proposals. But I would recommend that if any residents and stakeholders that want to comment, they should be contacting their respective commissioners and certainly come out to the public meeting when we make the decision. Because I do value their input, and I'd like to hear those differing opinions. But I think it's a little late in the game to create an ad hoc review committee at this point.
I agree, but I don't want that to come off sounding that we don't want any input from our public. I mean, if there's anyone out there who wants to make comment on the proposals that we have thus far or what we see in the next 4 weeks, this is the time to speak up. This is the time to pay attention to what's in those proposals, and you can you can give your input in a formal way, in a written way, or you can make a phone call. You can submit your comments to our staff, to your commissioner, or you can come to a public meeting. But this period, we will be making our decision, in the next 6 weeks. So it's time to give your opinion if you have one.
Yeah, I would agree with Commissioner Schaefer that if anyone has comments or suggestions, they can direct them to me, and I'll make sure that they're passed along to the staff or any ideas that they have. Because, again, we have had feedback throughout the process. I think the Parks Board started off the process very well, but there have been a lot of public meetings on this.
And I'll remind you one more time that the proposals are all on the website. They're actually on the front page of the website. So you can click on and read the proposals, the same ones that we got presented in the public meeting.
So I do have a brief comment. And I agree with the two firms that you've identified. They did seem to be the most viable organizations to do this work. Because for me, the most important thing is that that facility is put to the highest and best use, and that the firms that work with us can do capital infusion and improve. It's not enough to just maintain that building. There has to be something in it for the taxpayers and for the residents, and that only comes from capital improvement. My personal opinion is that, if you want highest and best use, you have to counter that with the impact on the park and the activity of the park. If you're running, just devil's advocate, if you were to somehow be able to run 2 weddings a day, 7 days a week, that would have a pretty dramatic impact on the use of the park, just because of the steady stream of vehicles in and out. So the two competing firms talked about running events generally Friday, Saturday, and possibly Sundays. That happens to be the prime time of the park use for the community. So, again, 200 or so people coming to a wedding could translate to maybe 100 or so cars coming in for each one of those events. So having them mindful, and I'm saying this for their benefit. What I'm going to be looking for is that they're being mindful of the actual impact on the park and the park activities. And we just talked about the geese problem. We don't want to have a new problem, in addition to the geese. So that's my comment.
All right. Do we have any other? We have a motion and a second. Do we have any other commissioner comments on this? Any staff comment? Do we have any public comment? Good evening, Jim.
Good evening. Hi. Jim Schneller. I missed the last and the rather full exposition, I hope it was, of the plans. I wanted to echo John's comment, which is a comment many have made, that intrusion on the park be minimized. Everybody knows if you're at the Willows, you can be there at a time when there's 2 cars go past every half hour, or you can be there at a time when there's 40 cars go past. That would be a very busy spring day. And it's just a night and day difference. I have to say also that here we are with the beautiful mansion. I went to an opera at that mansion last summer. So I would hope there'd be some kind of donation or encouragement to donate time for the public for community events, because some events could be in any park. Some gain a lot from being near the Willows. I am saddened by the fact that we have to consider this kind of possibility for the Willows, mainly due to the prior administration's ineptitude. And I am saddened by the fact that we have given a certain individual a settlement that involved large amounts of money, which really is not the big enough deterrent that we need for subsequent administrations.
Jim, could you stand? Oh, thank you very much. All right, I'm going to go ahead and call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes 7-0. And we can finally move on to our committee reports. First, we have Personnel and Administration. Commissioner John Fisher.
Thank you. First up, I have Resolution 2013-16. This resolution has been amended since it was first presented on the website, I imagine, last week. I have a new version here. I believe that new version is on the back table, available for public view. This resolution is in support of a tax holiday for WaterSense and Energy Star products in Pennsylvania. This is a resolution that was created by the Radnor Environmental Advisory Council, and they're asking us, I imagine they're asking us to also vote on this and in support. But I'll invite up Sloan Walker and Josh Hilbert, if they're both here, to give us a little background on this, and then we can have a little discussion.
Thank you all. I'm Sloan Walker, Josh Hilbert. We are here to ask the board to support a state tax holiday for household products which save either water or energy. Specifically, we think Pennsylvania should pick a week and declare that no state taxes will be due on any products that bear either the Energy Star or the WaterSense label. Now, we may have seen these labels. They're very important, very effective. Energy Star products save at least 25% of the energy used by non-labeled products. WaterSense saves at least 20% of the water used by non-labeled products. Why is this tax holiday needed, in our view? Pennsylvania has suffered drought conditions for 5 of the past 7 years. Our region of Pennsylvania suffered 6 weeks of drought last summer and another 6 weeks of abnormally dry weather. So we think we need to be as water efficient as we can. Our tax holiday is effective. There are actually 6 other states that have state tax holidays for these products. There's Georgia, Missouri, Texas, Virginia, Maryland, and North Carolina already offer these tax holidays. I contacted a couple of these states and asked them, how do they work? Are they effective? I talked to Virginia, and Virginia said that, in fact, their program is very effective. It's been in place for 5 years, and they report no complaints, no problems. The only request they hear is that they wish it was longer than 4 days a year.
Can I ask you, isn't that really isn't this just a marketing gimmick? Why isn't it exempt all year?
Well, it's an interesting point because there are a lot of products that are exempt all the time.
And in Pennsylvania, lots of stuff are exempt. So this to me is just a marketing gimmick.
It is something that the states that I spoke to said that the business community really likes in their communities because it is a way to generate interest for some of these products. So I think there is a hope that we could work with some of the business groups, some of the retailing groups to generate interest for this. And I think the idea is maybe we would start small and see if it works. And if it did, maybe there's an opportunity to expand it.
I think, again, I don't oppose the concept. I'm not going to vote for this. I think it's a marketing gimmick. It's somebody looking for free advertising to stimulate sales during a week. If it was so important to them that this is the right thing to do, they should exempt it all year round.
I hear you, and I would just say that there are a lot of different products that bear these labels, so it's not really favoring one store or one manufacturer. It cuts across a lot of retailers and a lot of different manufacturers. But I understand your point, and we have heard people say it would be great if we did something like this. Keep it simple, make it all the time. Don't pick 1 week. But we're sort of thinking maybe we take a small step first.
Maybe we should clarify that these Energy Star products and the WaterSense products are the way they obtain those designations is they submit their specifications of their product to this federal government. This is the EPA that offers these designations. The EPA tests them and verifies that they do consume the amount of energy / water that they advertise, and if it meets the criteria, Presley, he told you what the criteria is. Like, for instance, a toilet can only use 1.28 gallons per flush, whereas the government says that a regular toilet can only use 1.6 gallons per flush. So if it meets that, they're granted the WaterSense designation. They get to slap that label on the toilet.
Well, I have to tell you, I think this is a no-brainer. I mean, whatever we can do to encourage people to purchase these products. And if it's a marketing gimmick, it's a marketing gimmick. If it works, great. More people are going to purchase these products, and we're going to reduce our energy consumption and our water consumption, which is the point. So
move the approval.
I will second that.
And I'm going to vote against it also. Just maybe a good idea, but I'm going to leave it to the General Assembly to decide.
Well, Kevin, would you like to propose an amendment to?
First, I think it's not our role. I think it's supposed to be the General Assembly, but it is a gimmick. It's somebody looking for free advertising, because if this is so important that we ought to be doing this all year round, we ought to be doing it all year round.
Well, the way we can get that started is by, as a body, asking the legislature to do so.
But it's not our role to do that.
Well, actually, I think it is. I think it is.
We have a difference of opinion. We've been down this path before.
Well, I haven't been down this path with you at all.
You and I have had this discussion in this meeting.
Well, let's keep it civil. So
I am. I'm trying to.
Yeah, we're just having a difference of opinion.
Well, you guys are arguing whether you agree with each other. Let's focus on what we're trying to do here.
Yeah. The fact is that we're trying to get the legislature to take a step. So if they take this step, then maybe we can get a bigger step later, Jim. But if we try and get the big step now, we're not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, we're not creating a local tax holiday. The resolution is to encourage the state to consider it, and that's where Donald.
We have
that's where you're hoping that would happen.
Election
right?
of our state
I just think it's much more complex than there's a heavenly host of things that go into the state deciding how they should tax.
I agree.
And you maybe you would make that presentation, but For me, I don't have that information. My sense is let the General Assembly decide, because I don't have enough information to make an informed
If they see
decision.
that their constituents are interested in these matters, they feel that pressure and they feel the need to take on those kind of decisions. And that's kind of what we're hoping this is going to accomplish.
I think that's the idea.
Shouldn't they be
Well, we
contacted
really,
by their
really
constituents
appreciate-
directly then?
What, I'm sorry?
Shouldn't they be contacted by their
Well,
constituents
I think
directly?
we're trying to,
We are constituents.
yeah,
We are
we're also
contacting.
constituents.
But we're not as a board a set of constituents. We're
Well,
constituents.
we
as
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and
Only if
move
we
this
have 4
along. I
votes
really
can we
appreciate
contact
you all
them.
coming in tonight, and the EAC for doing all of this work and doing all of this research, which I know is very time-consuming, and we appreciate it, and we appreciate the recommendation. It's been moved and seconded. Do we have any staff comment or public comment before we take our vote?
Thank you, gentlemen. You can take your seat.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? Passes 5-2, with Commissioners Curley and Higgins opposing. Kevin Higgins.
Okay, next up, I'll move to authorize the Township Manager and the Superintendent of Police to extend up to 8 conditional offers of employment subject to the 2013 budget constraints and the newly agreed upon contract terms, FOP terms. The point of this is that we are at a crossroad where we need to begin hiring more police officers, some to replace retirees and some to just fill in the gaps. So at this point, this board needs to at least authorize the Township Manager and the Superintendent of Police to do so.
Second.
Do we have any other commissioner comment? Any staff comment?
Yes, Madam President, what we'd like to do is read those names into the record. I'd ask that either our corporal or lieutenant read those into the record.
Great.
The names will be Michael Cook, Raymond Rodden, Louis Pepe, Catherine Reardon, Francis Hayden, Stephen Sislinski, and Thomas Matatajic. And I'll get the proper pronouncing on that. That is correct.
Great, thank you. Do we have any public comment about these offers? All right, I'm going to go ahead and call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0. Which brings us to community development with Commissioner Curley.
Yes, I move the approval of certificate appropriateness for HARB 2013-4 for 219 Orchard Way, HARB 2013-6 for 308 Midland Avenue, and HARB 2013-7 for 311 North Wayne Avenue.
Second.
A bit of a consent agenda.
All right, seconded by Commissioner Spengler. Do we have any commissioner comment on any of these? Any staff comment? Any public comment? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All 3 motions pass 7-0.
I move the approval of ordinance 2012-09, amending Chapter 280 of the Township Zoning Code ordinance by establishing regulations for outdoor dining.
Second.
All right, any commissioner comment on this? Any staff comment? Any public comment?
Hi, Baron Gemmer, South
Baron.
Wayne Avenue. Just wanted to clarify one point I had brought up before that I said hopefully we'd get clarification on, which was relation to the White Dog Cafe, Lucky Dog Enterprises settlement agreement in terms of the hours. You're looking at me. Well, and maybe, John, are you?
The settlement agreement in front of me.
Well, I'll just give you the gist and perhaps, because an earlier interpretation was given several months ago. The current hours of outdoor dining prior to this going through would be 11 to 10, and with this new ordinance, it would be 8 to 10. So the hours would be increased to start at 8 a.m. The agreement with White Dog Cafe, or more likely their owners, Lucky Dog Enterprises, was originally, or still is, 5:30 on p.m. Monday through Friday for a start, ending at 10, and 11 a.m. on Saturday and Sunday, also ending at 10. And the prior discussion was that this would have no effect on those starting hours, the ending hours obviously being the same.
Imagine so. I mean,
They have a stipulation, if
Yeah.
they want the new hours, they have to come in and ask for them.
Right, we have an agreement with them that limits them to those hours.
Well, I understand, but obviously they would get some, they were going to get the benefit of the additional months and things like that, so that was.
I don't know, should we ask Mr. Brosman since he's,
Come on, George.
he's not jumping up? Yeah, Baron, off the top of my head, I don't know, but we have a stipulated agreement with them, and that locks them into what those conditions are. The only thing I don't know is whether or not they get the benefit, if the stipulation says they get a benefit of any change in ordinances. I don't recall that being in that agreement.
I don't think it's in there. I work with you on that. I don't think it's in
Yeah,
there.
I think they retain the right to come back in, though, and get the stipulation modified.
That's fine. I was more concerned about what the implied would be just based upon the ordinance itself.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks. All right, I'm going to go ahead and call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes 7-0.
I move the approval of Resolution 2013-32, which is an amendment to the Radnor Township 2013 Consolidated Fee Schedule for outdoor dining.
Second.
John, Rice, I have a question. So the folks who are grandfathered in because they have existing outdoor dining, do they have to pay this fee on an annual basis or one-time basis, or do they not? Is this only somebody who comes in for a new application?
Any new application?
So if you're grandfathered, are you a new application or not?
Your grandfather.
You're
Okay.
grandfathered in. I guess what I don't know is whether we're going to charge this on an annual basis, but I think once you're in, you're in. Someone wants to establish that doesn't have it now is going to have to pay this.
But somebody who's got it now but is grandfathered
They're
doesn't
grandfathered in.
They don't have to pay the $150.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other commissioner comment? Any staff comment or public comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0.
So, so 2013, this should be, item F should be 32, correct? And so are we looking for approval tonight, or are we looking to forward this?
That one, Commissioner, that looks to be forwarded to the Planning Commission for their review and input, as well as to Delaware County.
Very good. So I'll move the review of ordinance 2013-32, amending Chapter 280 of the zoning code by establishing municipal uses.
Second.
Well, you're moving so that we would refer it to our.
Review, yeah.
I used the word review because that's what was in.
To Planning Commission?
And it doesn't have a number yet. It should be XX.
The ordinance has a number on the.
That's not appropriate.
But it hasn't been introduced yet, so.
Okay. Oh, correct, it does not have a number, okay.
Okay, so
You're
Bill,
right.
you seconded
Yes.
that?
Yep.
Okay, is there commissioner comment on this? I do have just a brief comment. I continue to be a little uncomfortable with this, and I'm interested to hear what our Planning Commission and our county Planning Commission have to say about it. You know, reading through this basically streamlines the process for the township to engage in uses on our property that are not covered or anticipated by our zoning, which we could do anyway through a more rigorous process. And I'm not so sure that we want to, as residents, want to give up that more rigorous process. So I have to be convinced. And I'm interested to hear if Planning Commission is up to that convincing. I also want to note that we did make some changes to make it a little bit more challenging to engage in undesignated uses, and we said that area and dimensional requirements, the project would have to be subject to the district regulations in our zoning code, but then it says unless otherwise approved by the Board of Commissioners, which I think kind of negates that anyway. So I just want to put out there for the record, I'm a little uncomfortable with this, and I need to be convinced that this is something that is in our best interest as residents. So for the Planning Commission, that's my 2 cents. Is there any other commissioner comment?
Well, what is the impetus of this resolution, this ordinance? What's driving this?
Well, I don't think there was any one specific event. I think it is when we have projects on our property that we would have to go through zoning or go through a rezoning process to make happen, which we could do. This just makes it easier for us to do that. And am I getting that right, John Rice?
Yeah, the township does a lot of things on your property that if you were a private landowner, you'd have to file various permits, maybe land developments and things like that. I think it was Kevin's thought that, and even things like signs, it was his thought, and a lot of municipalities have municipal uses that are permitted by right, subject to some restrictions. So this is that concept, because you don't address it at this point. And arguably, anything you do, has to go through the same process. You can exempt yourself from zoning altogether. The law permits that. This doesn't do that, but it makes it uses permitted by right subject to these restrictions. So that was the thought behind this when it was first drafted.
Well, actually, when I first discussed this with Kevin a long time ago, this was really more about transparency, in that in the past there was no mechanism. We could pretty much do what we wanted to do. We now put things in place to assure there's a process that holds the township to some kind of standard. So that was where this really came from.
And just item, in section 1, item D, natural resource protection and buffer yards shall be required in underlying district unless otherwise approved by the Board of Commissioners. This is a legal definition, natural resource protection. I don't believe we have a right as a municipality to ignore
not federal or state regulations.
Right.
I think you're talking basically about whatever natural resource restrictions you have in your zoning.
Our own.
Steep
Okay.
slopes. Floodplain's a little different animal because you have specific regulations there that probably would require special exception. Right, those types of things.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Any other commissioner comment or staff comment? Any public comment on this? All right, I'm going to call the vote, and this is just to be sending it down to Planning Commission. We're not adopting this or introducing it. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes 7-0.
I move the review and referral of an ordinance amending Chapter 280 of our zoning code that prohibits outdoor dining in Garrett Hill.
Second. And I'll just comment that this draft ordinance was also revised, I believe, since last week to include an added section G. This was added by the Director of Community Development, Kevin Kachansky, even though he's supposed to be away right now. And I have read through his changes, and they seem consistent, at least at this moment. So I support this as it's written. And this, again, is being pushed not only by the community, but also by the Garrett Hill Implementation Committee and the Garrett Hill zoning process. They had looked at this many times, and during all of those discussions, at every moment, the public raised concerns about outdoor dining in Garrett Hill because of the very close proximity of the restaurants to the homes.
So it also mentioned, John, that today we received the Delaware County Planning Commission comments for our outdoor dining, and they recommended that we remove Garrett Hill.
Exactly.
I don't think that's accurate, John. All they did is they recommended that we consider it. It's an
Recommended.
important distinction.
Yeah, the recommendations were.
To consider it, not to remove it.
Okay.
Okay. But, yeah, consistently, the Radnor Township Planning Commission and the Delaware County Planning Commission consistently recommended that we do not include Garrett Hill in the outdoor dining use because of its close proximity to residential use.
Okay, do we have any other commissioner comment or staff comment, any public comment on this?
Patty Barker, Garrett Hill, Rosemont. First of all, I want to say thank you for introducing this ordinance tonight, as you promised at the last meeting. I do have a couple of questions. John, when you said Kevin made changes,
Yes, do you have?
I have the one that was on the
Section
table.
4G?
G.
Is G listed on your, it's a whole new section.
It should be
Paragraph.
underlined.
Yeah, it's underlined.
No.
Here, you can have mine.
I'll just read it.
Yeah, I can explain what was added. The
Go ahead,
original
John.
draft pulled out of the outdoor dining ordinance references to the Garrett Hill, Conestoga Road district, which is where bars and restaurants are permitted. And so, because we removed all the outdoor dining into a consolidated section, we just took Garrett Hill out. Kevin wanted to add this additional language in the Garrett Hill regulations itself. There's a provision under special regulations, Patty, that lists things in the Garrett Hill. So this gets added in that section of the Garrett Hill regulations, the district regulations itself, sort of additional emphasis that there's no outdoor dining permitted.
Okay, thank you for that. But that was not on the table, but thank you. Anyway, my questions are, it would seem to me that we want an ordinance that's clear and consistent and not confusing. And I'm wondering why the name of the ordinance specifically prohibits outdoor dining in the Garrett Hill zoning districts, as well as in Section 2 and Section 3, but in Section 1, it only talks about GHCR. I thought to be consistent, it would say prohibit outdoor dining in the GHCD or in the Garrett Hill zoning districts, in all Garrett Hill zoning districts.
Yeah, there is a little bit of inconsistency here. We may want to just clear it here. Section 3C states outdoor dining shall be permitted by special exception in all the zoning districts except all of the Garrett Hill districts. Now, that...
Which is what we'd like it to say.
Well, we'd like to say, but at the same time, outdoor dining is not permitted. Let's put it a different way.
Correct.
Dining is not permitted in any
Correct.
district in Garrett Hill except for the
Correct.
The
That is
Conestoga Road
correct.
district.
Restaurant is only a permitted use in the GHCR.
So it's not, so that phrase, except all of the Garrett Hill districts, that would not necessarily be consistent with all the other zoning codes. So if anything, we may want to have that say except the Garrett Hill
But in section-
GHCR district.
But
It
we're
says the
sending,
same
Patty,
thing
we're
in
sending this
section
to
2.
planning now,
Right.
so.
I understand that this is just an introduction.
Goes
I
to
just
planning.
wanted to
It's
say.
not even an introduction.
Well,
Well, you're sending it on.
Section 1, that section is taking out of the ordinance you enacted,
Right.
that line. That's the only reason that's in there.
That's what I thought.
Section 3 is a modification, again, of that ordinance, which talks about outdoor dining is permitted by special exception in all zoning districts except all of the Garrett Hill districts. However, you cut that, and then...
It's not wrong. It's not wrong.
No,
It's just,
I mean,
it's overstepping.
You can parse this
And the same
and
in
that-
section 2.
That's why G was added to this, so it was clear
Okay.
in the Garrett Hill, all the Garrett Hill districts, that applies to all the Garrett Hill
Yeah,
districts.
I just wanted to ask because I thought that's why section 1 was in there, but I thought everywhere else it says all of the Garrett Hill zoning districts. So
Yeah.
I'm just asking that question for clarification because, as I said, hopefully it would be as clear and unconfusing as possible. So I appreciate your comments, and I'm assuming, John, that would be the same in section 2 where it says it's hereby amended to prohibit outdoor dining in the Garrett Hill districts by changing paragraph A to read, although I think in paragraph A it only read GHCR originally.
Correct.
So.
Right, and we're taking that,
All right, but
Reference out.
it doesn't make sense, based on what you're saying, to change section 1 to say the same thing, Garrett
No.
Hill zoning district, because that's not what it said in the ordinance tonight.
I wouldn't change anything in this amendment. I
Okay.
would let the planning commission vet it, and if you think it's confusing, because we're amending an ordinance which just got adopted
Right.
tonight. So it's a little, you
Yeah.
got to go back to the main book. And I think that Kevin's addition makes some sense, and that's really what you want. You want a specific
Yes.
prohibition. I think you're good to go with this.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well-
there's no confusion here.
I wouldn't go that far.
Well, no,
Everybody
there's
gets
no
confusing.
confusion.
But
At no point
I
is it
do want to
allowed.
say
Yeah.
thank you again for hearing Garrett Hill residents' concerns and acting on it as expeditiously as you did. So thank you very much.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, and we've had public comment. Would all those in favor say aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0, and it will be sent 6.
One's missing. Kevin.
Huh?
left.
6-0 with Kevin Higgins not present, and it will be sent down to planning and county planning. Don?
Very well. I move the approval of settlement agreement for Bloomingdale Avenue.
Second.
Any commissioner comment? Any staff comment? Any public comment? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes 6-0 with Commissioner Kevin Higgins not present.
I move the approval of settlement agreement for Radnor Racket Club.
Second.
Any,
Settlement
Commis-
agreement addendum for Radnor Racket Club.
Second.
any commissioner comment? Staff? Public comment? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes 6-0 with Kevin Higgins not present. Next, we move on to Public Works and Engineering with Commissioner Jim Higgins.
The first item is resolution number 2013-33, which has to do with 200 Radnor Creek Road and a land development.
Is that Ison Creek or Radnor Creek? Radnor Creek.
This is a little bit unusual, Steve, so would you like to explain it?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. As with any new land development, there's always going to be a sewage facilities planning module submitted. The 3-lot Scardino subdivision was approved by the Board of Commissioners in 2007, and in 2010, the sewage facilities planning module resolution was also approved. For some reason, that was never submitted. So we met with the applicant, and they are resubmitting now at this time. And the purpose of this resolution is to resubmit their previously noted planning module. So this resolution is the final step in the planning module process from the township standpoint. It will now be sent to DEP, assuming the board passes this. It will be sent to DEP for their review, and any comments that come back will have to be addressed. So there is no fiscal impact to the township for this, and I would respectfully request the Board of Commissioners adopt this resolution for the Scardino 3-lot
But it's
subdivision.
Ison Creek. It's not Radnor Creek.
Their planning module states or Radnor, I'm sorry. So
Well, Scardino is on the corner of Radnor Chester Road, and so it's either Radnor Chester or
it's definitely not
Creek.
Radnor Chester. I'll
They're on the
recheck
corner,
their,
but the subdivision was for Ison Creek.
I will recheck their
Okay, let's-
submission.
And the other thing I wanted to note was that, this is based on a net flow increase for 2 houses since there's one already on the property.
That's correct.
Well, but one burned down.
That's the one that was already on the property.
So now there's another one still on the property?
From the original house was there, they have 262.5
Okay.
gallons per day of flow. So even though this is a 3-lot subdivision, they're giving credit for that house that was there.
Oh, I see.
So the net increase to our sewage flows will be 2 EDUs.
Okay. Did anyone move to approve that?
No,
Not
no,
yet.
it's not Radnor,
Okay.
it's Ison Creek. All right?
Thank you, sir. We'll make that change.
We're going to make that change. Steve, if this was approved in 2007, and the sewer module was also approved then why are we saying in the second paragraph that Scardino has proposed? Shouldn't that say in 2007 they did propose?
This language is directly from the DEP manual, so they give us a example ordinance, and that's where this came from. And I can make that change along with the Ison Creek.
Okay, and I think
that
then in the
tense.
next paragraph, it says, whereas Radnor Township finds the subdivision described in the attached sewage, blah, blah, blah. Shouldn't that also say that Radnor Township has approved the subdivision described? Because it all happened in 2007.
I think at this point it's semantics. What this is saying is that the subdivision, described in the attached sewage facilities planning module, conforms to applicable sewage-related zoning and other sewage-related municipal ordinances and plans, whether it be past tense or current. But they are, in their eyes, they're applying for the first time with this sewage facilities planning module. And in any sewage facilities planning module application, you this board, would have already approved the land development.
Well, why don't we make, in the second paragraph, make it, take has out, so it is past tense, and we'll leave the third paragraph as is.
Will do.
Okay. And then we'll change the caption or the heading to be Ithan Creek.
Yes, sir.
All right, with those changes, I'll move its passage.
Second.
All right, any other commissioner comment? Any staff comment? Public comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0.
The next item is, we have 8 resolutions having to do with the purchase of various equipment for the township. Should we take these one at a time?
Let's do them all together.
Okay.
Make a motion.
I move the passage of the following resolutions: 2013-34, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, and 57 for various equipment, including a leaf blower, diagnostic unit, vehicles, snowplow, and that's it.
Second.
Steve Norsini's going on a shopping spree.
Get his credit card.
Any commissioner comment on this? Any staff comment? Public comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0.
The next resolution is number 2013-35, which is the authorization for the sale of surplus vehicles and equipment. I move its introduction.
Second.
Actually, I move its approval.
Second.
Any commissioner comment?
Steve, just a question. Vehicle 68, only got 65,000 miles. I know it's a bit aged, but what's the logic for that not being functional anymore, that we have to sell it off and not use it?
If I could show you a picture of that, Commissioner, that is now a...
So the mileage doesn't reflect its condition?
Right, I guess the technical term would be rust bucket.
Okay.
It is truly falling apart just sitting out there in our yard. And this is, we were able to save one of these trucks when the board approved us getting a body last year, but this one we don't see, between the engine, transmission, body, and chassis, worth trying to save.
So the mileage doesn't reflect the condition?
That's correct. It doesn't reflect the age and hours.
And I assume, Steve, that the items that we just authorized purchase of in the prior resolutions, the items that we're replacing, at some point we'll see those for sale in a resolution like this?
That's correct.
Okay.
All these items are, a lot of them are actually out in our back parking lot,
Mm-hmm.
and the equipment is over in Public Works. And as new vehicles come in, if they are replacing other vehicles, you'll see us later in the year asking to do this once more.
Okay. All right, any other commissioner comment or staff comment on this? Any public comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0.
The next item is Resolution 2013-58, an authorization for the sale of our 1995 asphalt hot box to Willistown Township. I move its approval.
Second.
Any commissioner comment? Any staff comment or public comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0.
The last item on Public Works and Engineering is a presentation by a developer. The name is 115 Stratford Avenue Limited Liability Company, and the project is, at this point, a sketch plan for 115 Stratford Avenue in Ward 1 to renovate an existing commercial structure, the Villa Stratford Inn, and to build residences. It looks like 8 carriage houses or townhomes. I think the developer is here, so we could have him come up and make his presentation.
Good evening. I'm George Brosman, representing 115 Stratford Avenue LLC, which is an entity that has the property at 115 Stratford Avenue under agreement. They're the equitable owner of that property. With me is Bo Erickson. He's the principal of that entity that would like to redevelop the property. And we also have our civil engineer here that would be working on the project, Chuck Dobson from Inland Design. I'm going to give you a brief overview, and then Bo will show you some of the plans that we have. I think this property is very well known to the township. It's now improved with a vacant, boarded up historic building that I understand dates back to the early 1900s. It was the Villa Stratford restaurant and the Chef Tells and many other restaurants before that. It is approved for a restaurant and bar use. It's the latest. It was sort of the historic use dating back to the 60s, and it was recently reapproved for that use. As you may know, the building is in very poor condition. It had undergone a partial interior demolition in connection with a failed attempt to convert that building to a medical spa. Since that time, I understand the property has been through foreclosure and it has changed hands some different times. All the while, the condition of the building has continued to deteriorate. Bo is going to get into this a little bit, but it's my understanding that the property has no stormwater management facilities. There's almost an acre of impervious ground there, and it's higher than some of the properties in the area, and it may contribute to some of the stormwater concerns and issues downstream of the property. The property is split zoned. I'm going to go to an aerial that we have that was in your package, which is here. You have Route 30, Lancaster Avenue, sort of running along the bottom. You have the farmers market over here to the left. You have the shopping center adjacent to the farmers market. You have the subject property in this area here, 115 Stratford Avenue. This is the historic building that is now boarded up that I referred to. This is a parking area. Along Lancaster Avenue, in front of the property, all the way down to Banbury where the Wawa is, it's CO commercial zoning. In fact, part of the property is also zoned CO commercial. The zoning line actually runs through the building. Over here, across Stratford Avenue where the farmers market is and the shopping center is zoned PB, and the Stratford office buildings on the this side of Stratford Avenue is zoned PB also. On the opposite side of the property, there's more of the Stratford office buildings, but this is also zoned CO. So what you have here is the property is split zoned by CO. All along Lancaster Avenue is CO. All up here is CO. Commercial zoning over here. This part of the property is zoned R4 residential, so it's sandwiched in between this commercial zoning. And that R4 zoning continues to the three homes that abut the rear of the property, portions of the yards of three homes that are on Farm Road. And the R4 zoning extends up Windsor Avenue and then down Windsor Avenue towards Banbury. So the property has been devoted to that commercial use, even though it is split zoned. It had been originally approved for restaurant and bar use. I believe it was in 1964. And as I said, there was an approval recently in the 2000s to make it a medical spa. That work started, but it failed. It never opened. And the building, as I said, has continued to decline. As Bo will tell you, I think they have come up with a creative plan to redevelop the property. The first goal is to preserve and rehabilitate the historic building. But what they would like to do is to get rid of the restaurant and bar use and use it for an office use. We think that the office use is more appropriate, will be a use that's less impactful to the area. It is a use that's permitted in the CO zone, which is now running through the building and surrounding the property. We think the office is a better transitional use to the R4 zoning and the back than a restaurant and bar use is. So that's the first part of the plan. The second part of the plan is to take the area in the back, and rather than have it continue to possibly be a worry for the neighbors that somebody would try to continue to expand the parking for the restaurant and the bar, we are proposing 4 high-end carriage home type structures that Bo will show you. There's been some outreach to the neighborhood that he'll tell you about, and I think there may be some neighbors here. This is just a sketch plan at this point, so we're presenting it to you because we will need some relief. If we pursue the plan to convert the building to office, we will need to go to the zoning hearing board to get approval to change it from a restaurant and bar to an office use. We will need relief to do the carriage homes under the density modification provisions of your ordinance, which is permitted in the R4 zone by conditional use, so we'll be coming in front of you asking for conditional use approval with land development plans as well. And we will need a variance from the zoning hearing board to use density modification here in the R4 zone on a tract that doesn't have 5 acres. It's got about 2 acres. So, and we may need some other measures of relief from the zoning hearing board. I know in the past the zoning hearing board has granted that type of relief, but we wanted to come in front of you to show you this sketch to get your input, because I know that when we file our zoning application, you'll be hearing about it anyway. And then I have a schedule of our what we propose to do that I'll tell you after Bo goes through his presentation.
George, if I could interrupt,
Sure.
you said 4 townhomes, but what we were presented says 8.
If I said 4, that was a mistake.
Okay.
I should have said 8. Apologize for that.
How many can you build without the density modification?
We have it's interesting, the density modification in the R4 allows 5.5 units per the acre. If you look at the R4 zoning, it's 7,000 square feet lots. So that translates out to over 6 units per acre. Now that doesn't mean you can necessarily build that much. You have to lay out your plan. We have a plan that hasn't been fully vetted that we think we could do the 8. We could do 8 single families here. Maybe we could do more because there's only a 7,000 square foot minimum lot area, but it would require demolishing the building, and we would not be in a position to do all of the enhanced stormwater improvements that Bo is going to tell you about. If we can do the plan with the office use and the 8 carriage homes, we have a rather innovative plan to do, and a more costly plan to do stormwater management above and beyond your code that we think will alleviate some of the downstream properties.
So the answer to
issues.
my question is you could build 8 provided you tore the building down.
We think we could do a minimum of 8, although the zoning might even allow for more. Just if you looked at 7,000 square feet lots, we've got over 2 acres. So I'm not sure exactly what that would translate out to. But ironically, the density under R4 seems to be more than density modification. But then what density modification lets us do is relax some of the separations of the buildings between one another. It'll have a greater setback to the homes on Farm Road, and it allows us to do the carriage homes. So that's why we want to do density modification, and it does require open space, and the single-family dwelling development would not require open space.
Good evening. As George has said, we have looked at this project in many different regards, and I have had an opportunity to talk to the township staff, and they directed me to meet with all the surrounding neighbors. I've had an opportunity to do that. I've obviously received very good feedback and their concerns for this development. They've addressed stormwater, they've addressed traffic, in and around the site. They've addressed, maintaining as many of the trees around the periphery of the property as possible. And after hearing all of their concerns, I've looked at the property and we looked at it from multiple types of developments. And if we go to the existing plan, I think this gives us a good start from where the plan has evolved. Basically, currently, the majority of the site is paved, so it is an impervious surface. This is the higher grade, basically drains this way to the low part of the property here, and this is impervious, and there is no stormwater management on the site. There's a storm inlet here, which does receive the majority of the water, which takes it underground off-site. There are trees that go along the what was a right-of-way, which has been abandoned on the northern part of the property, and there are also trees that run along the eastern boundary, and these are things that we looked at and what is the best way to develop this and protect some of these natural resources so that we minimize the impacting of the commercial to our north, the residential to the east, and the other commercial developments to our south. So after looking at multiple varieties, the product or the development that we have selected is a mixed use which allows us to protect or preserve the existing Villa Stratford mansion, turning it into an office, as George said, which from the surrounding neighbors, several really would like to see that happen. And I think the view shed from Stratford Avenue, being able to save that would be an advantage for the area. We then looked at building carriage homes in the central part of the property, and in building them attached in a U configuration, we're able to do many things that are a significant benefit to the surrounding property owners. A, it allows us to maintain this in the center of the property, maximizing the buffering that we can provide around the development. We've also looked at, and we do have a innovative product which is called Pave Drain. It's a new designed cement block that is very different than porous paving or the other draining blocks. They're much larger. They actually have an arch underneath them. They have significant volume that they store in any and all storms. They're also cast. They come in large mats, so they're laid in 8-foot wide swaths, maybe 20 feet at a time. We're going to be presenting this to DEP tomorrow morning, and we're hoping to have a favorable outcome from the Southeast region. We're doing it at Villanova University for the Villanova Stormwater Project that looks at new technologies for DEP. This product was recently approved by Maryland's DEP very favorably. So we think it's a new technology that allows water to migrate into what in the past has always been a pervious or an impervious surface, and now really allowing it to drain into the underground or infiltrate into the ground at the point of origin. So we think that's a significant benefit. And this kind of a configuration would allow us to do that. From a traffic pattern, it also allows the traffic to come into this development and really have no or absolutely a minimum light pollution of the surrounding area. The residents of the carriage homes would basically drive into the U-shaped configuration, and all their movements or turning would be blocked by the building, so that car lights and so forth would not transfer into the surrounding neighborhood. And in that regard, we think it has a minimal impact, which we seem to we heard very loudly from the residents along the Farm Road. We looked at, so this is the product that we think would best fit into the neighborhood. We also looked at designing this as a more traditional single-family home community. Underneath the R4, basically lot lining this out and doing the single-family homes. This is a development we certainly could do. It does not allow for the mixed use and preserving the Villa Stratford Mansion, which we think could be an asset. It also does not lend itself to the buyers that we would like to attract. The carriage home is we target a empty nester buyer that is looking to buy a lifestyle of no maintenance, having the ability to have a basically manicured environment around their homes, but they don't have to take care of the maintenance. These buyers are not as price sensitive as the traditional single-family home buyer who's buying a home on a budget. They also tend to be older, and because they're buying the lifestyle, they're not as concerned about the HOA fees, which allows the neighborhood to be very well maintained and manicured. And they also tend to have, in terms of the demographics, much less of an impact on the township as a whole. Since most of them are empty nesters, you would not have as many school children. And the HOA would basically take care of most of the services, trash and such, where the traditional neighborhood would be more individual homeowners and school children. We also looked at doing the development with a more traditional approach, where we basically had 2 4-packs of carriage homes, which we thought initially may be a good way to do it. But after reviewing this plan and hearing the comments from the residents along Farm and Windsor Road, we thought that the Plan B configuration is superior because of its limited visual impact, the traffic flow, and our ability to really centralize the units in the middle of our building and keep them as far away from our neighbors as possible.
Does that fit, the U fit on the existing parking lot, or are you going beyond the existing parking lot?
This goes slightly past it goes past, the parking lot probably ends about here. Yes. But it enables us to provide the most screening and buffering from all the configurations that we've looked at. If anybody would like, I can elaborate on this paved drain product if you'd like to see that, or we can address that later on in the planning stages.
Did you give us, did you describe Plan A? It's in your written materials, but you know, that's the 8 homes,
yes,
single family. And that includes, that approach, you're creating, or you're reviving the Windsor Avenue street. Why?
Yes, we would bring access to the lots along our northern boundary, which was the abandoned, which was the right-of-way that has since been abandoned, and bring it towards the existing Windsor here.
But would you go through?
We would address that, I guess, through the land development process, but the road would need to go here to enable the setbacks and boundaries for these lots to be accessed.
Well, we're being asked, this is a sketch plan. You've come to us for, I guess, our initial reaction
Yes.
before you go through the formal land development process. So I guess at this point, I'll go ahead and give you my feedback. I think it's an attractive product that you've put forward. I think it's would be nice to have some upscale empty nester housing there. I think your plan, I have to be honest, when I saw the Plan B, I thought, whoa, that is a lot of putting a lot on that site. 10,000 square feet of office space, 40 spots, and the 8 residential units that you would have been allowed. I mean, that's squeezing a lot on that site. I wish you luck trying to argue that the density modification statute would apply here. I think it's an unrealistic extension of the logic of that statute. That statute is designed to encourage open space. It's all about the open space set aside and giving a density bonus for that open space set aside. And I think it's by design that it doesn't apply under 5 acres, because at some point open space becomes really negligible, or it becomes part of a setback anyway, or it becomes leftover land on the other side of parking spots. It's it's not really open space at that point when it's that minuscule and secondary. So, but we wouldn't be deciding that. Zoning hearing board would be. So you're on your own with that. But I like the idea of the mixed use, and I am intrigued with the product. It looks very attractive, and I like the porous pavers, of course. I think that you would have much more success with the neighbors, with this board, with Planning Commission if you decreased the density. So, I'm sure you've done your economic and financial engineering, and you know what works for you and what doesn't, but you're going to need a lot of variance and other relief to squeeze all of that in there, and it seems like too much for that site.
Well, if I can address that specifically, the plan itself under the existing zoning would allow for 10 units, so or 10.9 units. So that would be. I understand what you're saying. I think that we economically what I can do would be to do this plan, and I think everything I've tried to evaluate has kind of steered me here that I think it fits with a comprehensive plan, and it has a lot of benefit for the surrounding property owners. If this can be done, we'd really, we'd like to have the board's kind of guidance that we should go ahead, file for the zoning hearing board relief. We have our preliminary plan is almost done. We're getting ready to put that in. And if the board thinks this is a possibility, I'd kind of like to hear that. Or we can go with the more traditional neighborhood. That product can also be developed. But I think this is more, it would be better for the overall township as a whole, and I think it's a good use of it, and it would really not be a negative impact for the surrounding residents.
So of the 3 plans that you identified, Plan B seems to be the one which I would most likely support. The mechanism that you use to get there, that's up to you, and I suspect that Elaine is right on, that I think you're going to have a lot of fight to get some of the things that you identified. But that doesn't mean they're not worth fighting for, and that doesn't mean you can't meet this plan one way or another, or the concept of it.
Okay, thank you.
I also wanted to congratulate you. That is one of the nicest presentations and packages that we've ever been provided.
Thank you.
Questions, maybe, I don't know if you know the answer or George does. The concept drawing show a 3-story?
Yes.
Does that meet our height requirements, George? Do you know?
Yes, it's 35 feet, and they will.
Okay. And secondly, You have adequate parking under our code for the 10,000 square foot of the office?
Yes, we do.
Without depending on any of the parking necessary for the homes?
We do. And we also have the parking here on this plan is each unit will have a two-car garage and will have a two-car carport behind the garage. So your zoning doesn't count those two cars, but really each unit will have 4 parking spots. The ones in the back, actually, they will count because the garage will be here and the carport will be there. So this unit as a whole has a lot of parking, and these would then be guest spots. The other good thing about this is during regular business hours, there probably isn't a lot of need for guest parking here. But on an evening or a holiday, if this family and this family have Thanksgiving, the office building has no cars in it,
Right.
so I think the parking should really work very well.
Yeah, it's a nice symbiotic relationship.
Thank you.
I agree with Commissioner Schaefer that my initial reaction was too much. Good luck. It does look like a reasonable solution to save the mansion, which is obviously something we care about.
Yeah, I agree with, particularly on that point. If we can save Villa Stratford, that would be wonderful. It's, I work right in the building near there, and I've been watching that building just deteriorate and decompose for the last 3 years. It's a crime. It's a shame. It's been, when I first moved here, it was a restaurant called San Francisco East. Then it became Hespies. You remember this, Bill. Then it became Villa Stratford and run and owned by Chef Tell, who was a TV personality. Then it was purchased by the one group, and then you called it a medical spa. I think it was going to be more of just a spa.
Yeah.
And then Mr. Barat Luthra, came on the scene, and he spent a small fortune and got absolutely nowhere. Feel bad for him, but that's the way it goes. But if you can save that building, I think that would be a great achievement.
Well, thank you. And we know we can, but we are going to need some assistance from the board to do that, because it will require a very significant investment. The building is in very bad shape now. There's holes in the roof. They started the demo. There's half the floors are torn up. It's primarily gutted inside. It's in bad shape, and if it's not addressed in the near future, it will continue to get worse.
A couple of years ago, we spent a couple $100,000 putting some stormwater management in the parking lot of the buildings where you work, because all that water eventually goes down to the middle school. So the more water you can hold on there will save the middle school downstream, and of course the Midland Avenue, St. David's Road area. I like the mixed use. I think it's a nice development. We could wind up with a couple office buildings here in the future if it doesn't get developed. So we wish you well.
Thank you very much.
I'll just brief comment. Again, really nice documentation. We appreciate it. It makes it much easier to make decisions. Density is, it looks like a decent plan, and it looks like you went to a lot of trouble to figure out what makes sense for yourselves, to economically and from an engineering standpoint. I definitely have concern about the density, and one of the issues, I'm going to be known as the commissioner. I have 2 sons who are in the fire department. So when I look at plans, I think, how are the trucks getting in there? And one of the issues with this design is I assume Windsor Avenue is not an existing lane, and you only have a 22-foot wide driveway. Now, I know this is just in a preliminary design, but it doesn't seem adequate access for a fire department. You get one truck laid in there, and the second truck can't come in. So, if there were, God forbid, if there were a fire in that facility, it'd be very difficult for the fire trucks to get in. And that's generally that's what I'm most concerned with. Can we get equipment in there? It's got some interesting layout, but that all hinders access to fire vehicles. The density I can live with, but we have a major stormwater issue in this township, And this board spent about $2.5 million in Wayne to address it. And this property is one of the contributing properties to that stormwater issue. So I'm going to be looking for above and beyond the stormwater retention at that site, store and release, because of the issues downstream.
As are we, and that's what the products that we're looking at will be the first time they've been used in Pennsylvania, and we're looking for a really good stormwater management system, and that's my engineers here. Why don't you speak to that?
I would like to, yeah. Thank
Yep.
you. Good evening. I'm Chuck Dobson from Inland Design. We were retained by 115 Stratford LLC to prepare these plans moving forward the subdivision plan that's ultimately going to be submitted to the township. In reviewing the concept with Bo, he made it very clear that stormwater is probably the #1 issue for the site and the area at large. I think just some brief numbers here. I know this is a late meeting. Presently, there is about an acre of impervious area on the site with the existing building and the existing parking lot. This proposal, if you were to assume that the paved drain that he spoke about was in fact asphalt, actually only increases by 5,000 square feet. So when you consider that roughly 12,000 square feet of the paving area itself is going to be paved drain, there's an immediate impact reduction in water quality-wise. Furthermore, the site is only 2 acres, so with respect to the problem you speak to, it can only go so far, but Bo has indicated that he's committed to making sure that that does, in fact, go above and beyond. And I've run some preliminary numbers for the pre-developed and post-developed stormwater flows that will come off the site. And presently, the 100-year storm has roughly 15 CFS. Doesn't really mean a lot to this board, but after the stormwater management techniques are implemented, I foresee that being somewhere down in the 3-4 range. So we're talking about probably a 600% reduction in what's coming off here, and that can only benefit the folks down Windsor Avenue. So.
All right, well, I'm going to give the neighbors who are here a chance to make brief comments, and I'm begging you to make them brief. So if anybody would like to come up. And we have received, I think all the commissioners received, some correspondence from the neighbors indicating that they are currently opposed to this plan that has been proposed.
Yes, my name is Robert Zelton. I live on Windsor Avenue, beyond where the road is closed. My daughter lives across the street on the intersection of Farm and Windsor, so we're neighbors, and I have not spoken to the developer. But the neighborhood has dealt with this property and potential uses of it for years and has been very adamant in our opposition to many of the things that have been brought forward. We, as was initially pointed out, very much surrounding us is commercial on Lancaster, the farmers market, etc. The thing that we jealously want to protect is the residential aspect of that community. And the less density, the better. I would just say off the top of my head that Plan A is much more appealing to me than either this or the other option that was presented. We, frankly, from some of the neighbors I've spoken to, and this is not a consensus of the neighbors, we see very little advantage in keeping the Cheftel building. We think it's a detriment to selling the units individually. I would not want to live next to an office building, I don't believe. I also think that the stories involved, if it's a 30-foot high building and it's for empty nesters, that single-family units that may be on one floor make a lot more sense to me than multiple-story buildings with parking underneath and an office building nearby. We are interested, of course, in maintaining our property values, as you might expect. And I am always kind of frustrated by the argument that we have to do this to make it work financially. And it makes the argument always seems to be that it's a zoning problem if it doesn't work financially. It could be, in fact, the asking price for the property that is causing the problem, and the seller just doesn't have a realistic opinion of what can be done with the project under the current zoning. So I just want to state that there's a lot of positives with regard, and you all are more enamored of it than I am of this particular plan. I like Plan A much better. But we do not want to chase anybody away. That's not the idea. If we could continue to get single-family residences with not a lot of density to maintain the image of the neighborhood that we have on Windsor and Farm, which is about the only residential properties left in that particular area, we would be supportive and appreciative of that. And we would rely on the township, of course, to deal with the water runoff. We all get flooded basements in that area, with the height restrictions, with the lighting, with the noise, with the berm they're proposing. All that is fine, but I would just like you to think about whether or not the property makes more sense from a realistic standpoint if the Cheftel building is not there and we have less density in terms of how the buildings are structured. Thank you.
Bob did a really good job. My name is Leslie Morgan, and I live at 12 Farm Road. So though it's not drawn to scale, part of my backyard, I'm the last one closest to Lancaster. That would be my house. So Bo came to visit some of us, and then we had caucused, and we told him that some of us that had come to my house, which were 6 of our neighbors, preferred the single-family home. Further, when we looked at this, I think I got unanimous consent, and I had everybody sign an identical letter that we proposed to the Board of Commissioners in 2006 when the same kind of development was proposed, multi-use attachment houses. So I guess what I would ask the Commission is that it is zoned R4, and I know that it is a very nice presentation and very professional, so I thank you. However, in the R4, when we all bought our houses, and many of us put significant hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars into our houses, we thought that would be protected. And it has always, every few years, it rears its ugly head, and we have to come in front of you guys and take everybody's time and say what we would like is single-family homes. And I don't think that that's asking a lot. I mean, this story is very similar to Atterbury. I think you guys are familiar with Atterbury. So Atterbury is selling very well, I am happy to say. It is on 4.7 acres, and originally I think the developer wanted 16 in terms of how he laid it out for the neighborhood, and they got very concerned. When he filed for 14. And when it was all said and done and the math was added in with all the little calculations of zoning, it is 10 houses on 4.7 acres, and they're selling very well on quarter-acre and similar-sized lots with appropriate stormwater. And I think everybody is going to have a good result in terms of the neighborhood, increased values, and new neighbors coming in and enjoying Radnor Township. So that is what we like. I gave you 2 sets of letters, 06. We have been consistent. We're very sad that 2 entrepreneurial kind of owners came and tried their hand. I think it was a money issue. It was not a location issue. And so we are very opposed to density, and we're opposed to mixed use. I don't even know how you would get the zoning approval for that kind of project. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Madam President, if I may. Oh, I'm sorry.
My name is Lee Williams. I live at 413 Windsor Avenue, which is the last where Windsor Avenue ends now, and it used to continue on, as you can see on the map there. Something that needs to be clarified is I've heard some talk about Windsor Avenue being reopened or whatever. 25 years ago, when I bought my property, it did belong to the town. I was told that I had to maintain it and plow it, whatever, but that it was town property, and if they needed to dig or whatever in there, they would. Then about 10 years ago, I was told that since a certain number of years of non-use had gone by, I forget what it was, 25 or 35 years, that the property became the property of the homeowners on that piece of property. In other words, instead of the property line going back 15 feet from the center of Windsor Avenue, my property line and everyone else's property line increased to the center of where the Windsor Avenue formerly was. And I believe I've been paying taxes on that size lot for some time.
We don't own any of the roads. The property owner owns the road. You've always owned that property. We never owned it. We just had a right-of-way, which permits us to use it, but we never owned it.
All right. So that is just something that I think, when I heard that, I just see that declared. The other thing, and looking at the drawings here, you notice the aerial drawing had a lot of vegetation, a lot of trees, a lot of things there. Not sure when that was taken, but in between the owner or the person who had access to the property before the current owner cut down 40 or 50 trees from that without township permission, and has a lot less now.
We're very familiar with that.
And it would seem that when whatever plan is taken here, that there's going to be far fewer trees at that point. And we are right that that is the highest point in Radnor, Stratford Avenue, and it starts going downhill from there. From there all the way actually to the high school is slightly downhill from that point on. Mm-hmm. So that, I guess we're all downstream from somebody, but that's really where it starts. And that property, however, the storm water and whatever is taken care of, I just urge everyone to give careful thought to, because that is really the starting point of it there, and it continues from that point on. There is underground piping there that comes out of the parking lot from the office park, and that is continually running. Even in August, where there's a drought, you can still go out and hear the water running through the underground pipes there. So it's continually a wet running action.
Great.
So that was just my concern. My
Thank
concern
you.
Primarily is in the drainage and in the stormwater management of that property, and I just wanted to be heard.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Well, we have had. Oh, do we have another one last? Mm-hmm.
Hi. My name's Nishan Dursimonian, and I'm at 16 Farm Road, in the middle there on Farm Road. And the one point I want to make, from my perspective, the developer pointed out that there'll be an interior driveway into this proposal here, which would stop the car lights and things like that. But on the flip side is my view going back out there is going to be looking at a 35-foot story backdrop there. So, which leads me to appreciate having the open air, open space, single-family units. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you for coming out. It's very helpful to have the perspective and hear it from you firsthand of the neighborhood. All right. Well,
Madam President, if I may, just briefly. Sorry, I'll keep it brief. Two things. One is so the board is aware and the public is aware. The current owner had some issues with trees, I believe the one gentleman referred to. I had gone to the Shade Tree Commission, and fines were recommended to the amount of $14,000, which the Shade Tree Commission approved. So I'm working with the solicitor now to go ahead and pass that good news along to the current owner that they are due $14,000 to the township in penalties and fines for that as well. The second point I just want to make is I want to thank the developer for coming forward here with a plan. I know in the short time I've been here, I've heard a lot of comments from the residents about lights, traffic, all that impact. The only thing I would caution on this is I know there's some work that has to be done, but I think sometimes you got to watch what you wish for because it might come true, and I think some of the impacts from the single-family homes you may want to look at because I think that may create some bigger issues for you than maybe trying to work along this line here, because I think going back to several plans ago with traffic lights and all those types of things, it potentially could end up with bigger problems than a modified version of this or something. So I would encourage you to continue to keep working with the developer on this.
Okay, well, thank you, Bob, and thank you for coming in, and I hope you've gotten some helpful feedback from us. And I am very confident we'll be seeing you again.
Thank you very much. Thanks. That concludes the Public Works and Engineering portion of the agenda.
All right, next we'll move on to Public Safety with Commissioner Spengler.
Yeah, Public Safety, number O, we're going to take off the agenda, and we're going to set up a Public Safety Committee meeting to review that before we bring it back for introduction.
Well, before we move on, though, I just want to note that we're not going to vote on this tonight, that what it is an enormous amount of work that our police department has done in going through our entire township, every street, and codifying, getting down on paper what the speed limits are, what the signage is, what all of the parking signage is, what all of the stop signs are. And it has been just an enormous, tremendous amount of work, and they've spent a long time doing it. They have put together this ordinance, and it's going to take us a little bit to parse through it, and it is posted on the website and for people to look at. And as Bill described, it'll be in the very near future, in front of our subcommittee for kind of extended more extended discussion about what's in here and what's suggested. Thanks.
Next, I'd like to move the approval of Resolution 2013-36, approving the purchase of 3 new vehicles for the use by the Radnor Township Police Department.
Second.
Bill, I got a question. I couldn't trace these specific items back to the capital plan. I don't know if the make of the vehicle changed or what, but all these are in the plan and the budget?
Yes, they are. A couple changed due to some vehicle breakdowns, and the plan changed a little bit with regard to what we're replacing them with, but in terms of dollars, it's consistent with what the board adopted originally.
Okay, any other commissioner comment on that? Any staff comment or public comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0.
I'd like to move the approval of Resolution 2013-37, directing and authorizing the Township Manager to execute agreements with the United Public Safety for the purchase of parking management software and electronic handheld ticket machines.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any commissioner comment, staff comment, or public comment? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes 7-0.
I'd like to move the approval of Resolution 2013-38, approving the Mainline Jazz Festival Fest and waiver of fees.
I'll second.
Bill,
And I have a
you wanna
question.
Go ahead, John. I'm sorry.
The way this was written up, I couldn't tell. Are we still getting we're getting some fees from them? Like last year, we asked them for one $250 fee.
Yeah,
But they gave us more last year than.
the agreement calls for them contributing $1,000 to the
Didn't they? I
township.
thought they contributed. There were 2 separate issues last time. There was a cash sum, but there was also one fee for food vendors.
That is correct, and the $1,000 covers both of those components.
It does?
Yeah,
Okay.
the agreement says just one lump sum of $1,000.
All right, thank you.
So, Bill, do you want to clarify Bill's comments that I think he just, in his effort to be fully transparent, recognizing he's not a financial person, he's a police officer, I think his explanation, the fiscal impact, is slightly inaccurate.
Yeah, and referring to the legislative summary, there's $5,141 of estimated in-kind costs, which includes the $250 for the food vendor, the health officer's time with the food vendor license. What we are basically what we're doing with this agreement is providing $4,141 of in-kind costs that are already in our budget just with our resources and asking for $1,000 back. The fiscal impact is written as though we would be expending the $5,141 when in fact it's the township's contribution in kind.
So the statement that it's being drawn from the capital fund is not accurate?
That is correct.
Okay, any other commissioner comment on this?
Well, it says up to a value of 5141. Now, what if the costs exceed 5141? Then we don't go back to the jazz festival, do we?
We have not in the past. I don't anticipate going back. I think that this program has been going on for long enough that when we estimate the time from Public Works and Police, it's pretty spot on. I think it would take something significant to cause these numbers to deviate materially to the point where we would want to go back and revisit it. But I think at this point, what we're trying to do is fix the cost for the festival so that they can plan accordingly. And right now, we'd fix that cost at $1,000 for them.
All right, that's all fine, but if it exceeds 5,141, we're going to pay for it.
Can I just comment on that?
It's in kind.
The history here is we're driving that cost. We're deciding the level of services to provide to that event, meaning how many officers, how much trash to pick up, and so on and so on. So we control the cost. It's not driven by those throwing the event. It's driven by us.
Well, it's driven by circumstances that could be beyond our control, like 500 more people attend than we thought. Well, there could be costs that we just can't control. My point is that I'm not objecting to the idea, but if it costs more than $51.41, it's out of our pocket.
Okay, any other commissioner comment or staff comment? Any public comment on this? All right, I'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes 7-0.
Madam President, if I may, is there a possibility we could switch the finance and audit and move Parks and Recreation forward now and then finish with finance and audit? There's a possibility.
Fine with me. We will move on next to Parks and Recreation with Commissioner Nagel.
First item on the agenda for Parks and Rec is Resolution 2013-44. It's authorizing the township to use school district transportation for the camps and whatnot, and an amount not to exceed $20,000. I move the passage.
Second.
Bill.
Any commissioner comment? Any staff comment on this? Any public comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0.
These are all consent agreements coming up, right, John?
The next 6 could be consent. They can be lumped together.
Yeah, why don't we just do them all?
Because all they are is where we exceed $3,000. That's why we have to do them per the charter.
Why don't you just read each resolution number?
2013, 45, 2046, 47, 48, 49, 50. It's Brida for summer tennis, Theater Horizon, United States Sports, GeoVentures, World Cup Sports and Summer Sports, Nature Camps, and Brandywine Learning Center for the Harry Potter camp.
And you so move the approval.
I so move.
I'll second it.
All right, any commissioner comment on any of that? Any staff comment? Any public comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0.
Bob, you should put Park and Recreation in the beginning of the agenda. Bob, you should put Park and Rec in the beginning of the agenda.
Or Lane.
Next thing, I just want to make some announcements about Park and Rec, although maybe I'll let Tammy make them since she stayed around
I would
this
love
long.
to make them since I stayed. I just have to get home to my babysitter who's watching my son right now, so that's why I was moved it within the agenda. So thank you. I really respectfully very thankful of that. Thanks. There are a couple of upcoming events in April. April's annually a very busy month for us. We have a lot of things that are going on. Before I get into the list of things that are happening, I do want to thank everybody that participated in our first skate park event that we had that took place just on this Saturday, April 6th. We had nearly 100 people take part. It was an event basically with a skate park competition. And there were a lot of vendors and businesses that came out from the community, and I want to thank everybody that participated in that. It was a great first event that took place at that facility. In April, we have our first car show. It's going to come up. It's going to be on North Wayne Avenue. It's going to take place on Sunday, April 21st. It does have a rain date of April 28th. We're looking forward to a very exciting day out there on North Wayne Avenue. It is free for spectators. Of course, for folks that want to register their car, there is a fee for that. Although we're currently taking a wait list, we're going to take a look at that and see if we can open it up. So we encourage folks to come out for that event. We think it's going to be a great time. There's going to be a lot of entertainment and activities for everyone, not just for car enthusiasts. Also, we have that weekend is going to be the annual Trout Derby that's going to take place at Sawmill Park. That's an annual one that takes place there. It does fill up quickly. You do have to come into the township building to register for that.
And that's, you didn't mention, youth trout.
Youth Trout Derby, yes. Thanks, John. And we also have on Tuesday, April 23rd, our annual Arbor Day tree planting ceremony that will take place at Friends of Radnor Trails Park. Has a rain date of Wednesday, April 24th. So the Cub Scouts will be out there in the Radnor Conservancy, and we'll go through and award the Tree City USA for 2012 to the township. So we're looking forward to a great event with that. So, and also we're registering for summer camps. All of our summer day camps and summer activities are gearing up, of course. You can check out all that information on the website, right under Parks and Recreation at the website of radnor.com. And there's also, for the Township Manager's Health and Wellness Challenge at the Wayne Art Center on Wednesday nights over the next 4 Wednesdays at 6 o'clock p.m. There's going to be a series of health and wellness seminars that are for free for everybody within the community if you want to come out and take part in those. So if you're always looking for information, check out the website, of course. We always have a lot of things going on, and never hesitate to call our department. Thank you.
That completes Parks and Rec.
Well, I have one item, John,
Yeah.
to add. our Public Works Department, in cooperation with several community groups, is going to construct a rain garden at Cowan Park. And this will be, as you all know, we approved the installation of a comfort station there. And with this rain garden, we're going to, it's a joint effort. Chanticleer is donating the plants. Labor is by the Boy Scouts, our Environmental Affairs Council, Friends of Cowan Park. And the finished project should reduce our impervious cover by about 60, well, wait a minute. The new comfort station is a 60% improvement over the old, and the rain garden will even augment that situation. So I'm happy to announce that. I think it's a great development.
Thanks, Jim, and thank you, Tammy. All right, we will now move on to our last committee section, and that is Finance and Audit with Kevin Higgins.
All right, the first item excuse me, on the agenda is the disbursement and acceptance and approval of items identified as 2013-3C, 2013-3D, and 2013-3E for a total of $2,146,380.99, all of which has been reviewed and approved by the various departments and is within the approved budget limits, so I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Any commissioner comment, staff comment, public comment? All in favor say aye.
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 Passes 7-0.
Next item on the agenda is Resolution 2013-39, authorizing the township manager to bind workers' compensation coverage for the Radnor Fire Company for the fiscal year for the Radnor Company, March 1, 2013 through March, is it March 1, 2014, Bob, or is it actually the February 28, 29, or whatever it is?
Yeah, I think we wrap it around to March 1st, just in case it's a leap year.
Okay, that's fine then, as long as it's accurate. So I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Oh, I guess I should say it's $29,743.
All right, any commissioner comment on that? Any staff comment or explanation necessary? No, okay. Public comment? All those in favor said aye.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Before I move into U, V, and W, since they're all related, I guess Bill or Bob, do you want to just provide a brief explanation around W, since I would have organized it W first before the other two? But I think there's a proposal on the table for us to enter into a termination around the swapation, which I personally think is an excellent idea. We shouldn't be in the business of taking on the significant interest rate risk associated with that, and we provided an opportunity that looks like we can take significant risk off the table at a reasonable price.
Sure. I'll just take a moment and provide a little bit of background. In 2004, the township issued general obligation bonds in the amount of $17,195,000 for general capital purposes. At that time, they were issued with fixed rate bonds. A year later, in August of 2005, the township entered into or approved an interest rate management plan, which included the swapation agreement with the counterparty, which in this case was Lehman Brothers. At that point, the township received upfront funds of $1,080,000 in consideration of giving Lehman Brothers the option to exercise the interest rate swap, which would be effective August 1st, 2014, at which time the township agreed to pay 4.81% fixed over the life of the bonds, which is all the way out to 2034. And the township would receive 67% of the 1-month LIBOR. Obviously, what has happened since that time, or since 2008, basically, the interest rates have declined dramatically to the point where what the township would receive, the 67% of LIBOR, is somewhere around 0.20 of 1%. So basically, as low as you can get. Which results in the township having a pretty significant fixed interest rate moving forward if the swap were to be exercised. As part of that swap agreement, then, the township would be financially required to issue variable rate refunding bonds effective August 1st, 2014 to offset the costs associated with the swap agreement. The variable rate bonds would be required as to not have an additional fixed rate on top of the 4.81% that we would be paying the counterparty. In addition to that, and probably more importantly, is the discussion of risk and the interest rate risk, the credit risk, tax risk, counterparty risk, all of which the township would bear all of the financial and the implications of those risks turning sour. So as part, and this goes back to work that the CBFAC did, is identifying this as one of the items that the township should keep an eye on. It's something that we've been working on, or periodically getting updates. And at the end of 2012, the board and some members of the board met with the CBFAC and discussed moving this particular project to the top of the priority list, at which time, I'm sorry, the CARFAC, at which time the CARFAC and the administration have been working on understanding how the swap works, what options are available to the township moving forward. And after several evening meetings of going through all this information with the swap advisor, the township's bond counsel, underwriters, and having discussion, we've all come to the conclusion that terminating the swap and taking advantage of the interest rates where they're at today and fixing those for the rest of the through 2034 is absolutely the best way to go for the township. Included in the legislative summary with Resolution 41, which is, Resolution 42, which is item W, includes a little bit of the discussion about the fiscal impact and some of the estimated costs associated with the variable rate bonds as well as the risk. That's the background at this point. With interest rates being where they're at, it seems to make the most sense to take this particular liability that's on the township's balance sheet and convert it over to something that's fixed rate, something that's predictable, something that we can plan around over the long term. And the opportunity that exists in the market now with interest rates makes now the right time to do it. In addition to this explanation, Pete Egan with Phoenix Advisors, who's assisted the township as the swap advisor, is also here if there's any detailed related questions regarding the market or how the pricing works. Because I think we've all become just dangerous enough to talk about it, but if there's any real specific questions, we've asked Pete to be here. It's with Pete's help as well as the volunteer hours, again, from even going back to CBFAC when they identified this as being a potential problem for the township, and then the work done more recently by CARFAC in sifting through all this. Again, it's just the volunteer assistance that the township gets from these folks is invaluable, so it's very much appreciated.
Bill, the one thing you didn't mention in your discussion is the effect on our bond, on our rating. That getting this off our books will definitely be helpful going forward with our bond ratings.
Sure. In discussions with the potential underwriter, and that's one of the pieces of legislation here tonight, is anytime you can get these kind of risk-adverse items off of your balance sheet, the rating agencies are going to look favorably upon that, especially in a situation where we can do that and not negatively impact our long-term funding. Basically, with interest rates, we show a slight uptick in our overall debt service, but it's definitely something that's manageable versus the variable rate bonds. So you're absolutely correct.
Well, in my view, this is, again, another no-brainer. I mean, we're giving up the opportunity to completely gamble on the very unreasonable hope that interest rates would be significantly different, and it's just, I think we're finished gambling with this. I'm finished gambling, and I'm happy to sign on and take the conservative route and get this under control and predictable.
So the first item on the agenda is Resolution 2013-40 to assign or obtain bond counsel with respect to refunding the 2004 bonds associated with our efforts to terminate the swap agreement. So I make a motion to approve Resolution 2013-40.
Any other commissioner comment? Any more staff comment?
Just real quickly, the costs associated with 40 and 41 will be capitalized into the refunding. So they'll be paid for out of the proceeds.
Right.
And the bond counsel is Cousin O'Connor as well. I neglected to mention that.
Any public comment on this? All right, I'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes 7-0.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is similar to obtaining the bond counsel. It's Resolution 2013-41 with an underwriter agreement with respect to the 2004 bond refunding and swap termination, and that advisor is Benning and Scattergood. So I make a motion to approve.
Second?
Any other commissioner comment?
Yeah, I picked up some language in here that didn't quite mesh with the, if you look at the second whereas clause, we're referring to the counterparty, and I think that should say Lehman Brothers. 3 places, because in the termination agreement, the counterparty is defined as Radnor Township.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's defined as Lehman Brothers, whereas Radnor Township is the township. So I think in 3 places there, we ought to change counterparty to Radnor Township, and in the to Lehman Brothers, I'm sorry. And in the third whereas clause, we have the same situation, and I also have some language change in line 3, where we say, and issuing fixed-rate advance refunding bonds or being put into the swap agreement by the counterparty. I would recommend that say, and issuing fixed-rate advance refunding bonds or being subject to Lehman Brothers' exercise of the swap option in August 2014. So if you agree with those changes, I would move having your motion amended. Okay. This is 41, 2013.
Just the one other, which maybe you captured in that comment. In that second whereas, the very last sentence, it reads, if such option is elected by the county party, it should be counterparty.
That's going to change.
But you're going to change it to Lehman Brothers.
So I'll take care of it.
Okay, are you moving to amend, or are you asking
He
him to
moved,
amend?
and I seconded his.
John, is there any risk to that? Because they shouldn't be flipping it in this time period, but they could. So is there any risk to wording it in that manner?
All right, any other commissioner comment on the amendment? Staff comment, public comment? So let's vote on the amendment first, on Jim's amended language. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? That passes 7-0. And the underlying motion, which was moved by Kevin and seconded by
Bill.
Bill?
Why do you have to always ask who's second?
I know, it's always you.
Well, you never
Any
second the one when
commissioner
you make it.
comment, staff comment, or public comment on the underlying motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
It passes 7-0.
All right, and the final resolution in the package is 2013-42, accepting the swap termination fee and authorizing the manager to execute a swap termination agreement. And the fee is? Let me get my page.
Subject to non-disclosure, so
Okay.
that's
Never mind.
why the agreement's not attached. As
Okay.
part of the.
I stand corrected. So I make a motion to approve Resolution 2013-42.
Second?
And I would have a similar amendment, Kevin, in the second whereas clause, the words counterparty should be changed to Lehman Brothers.
Okay. We
I'll
have-
second Jim's amendment.
Okay, any further discussion or staff discussion or public comment on the language change? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And it passes 7-0. Now we will address the underlying motion.
Nope.
Do you want?
Go ahead.
The fee.
I'm sorry, you got to introduce yourself
Yeah,
first.
Rob Murdock, 104 Motion Lane.
Thank
Hi,
you.
Bill. Why is that fee subject to non-disclosure?
No, it's the bankruptcy court has mandated that.
Well, let's let John Rice answer
No,
the question.
yeah,
Well, it's in our
I don't
materials.
I don't know if I caught the termination fee to exercise getting out of the swap. Is that what's subject to non-disclosure?
Yes.
where did that, is that from the original contract? How did that arise, that being a non-disclosure?
It arose out of our negotiation with the Lehman Brothers bankruptcy trustee. And it was a clause that they insisted on in terms of setting, when we set the price. Because they have a number of these that are out in the market, and they're trying to liquidate them, and at the end of the day, they don't want one agreement being negotiated against another.
Got it. Okay. And that's being capitalized?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So it won't show up in the official statement either? Fair enough.
Well, we could most likely disclose it after the dust settles on the bankruptcy.
Okay.
No.
Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and take any other commissioner comment, staff comment, or public comment on the underlying motion. Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0.
Okay,
And you know what, before you move on, let me just say thank you for including that chart of all of the other bond issues in the region and their discount rates. That was very helpful to whoever prepared that.
Sure. One last thing as of the next step moving forward. With the execution of that, what you'll see in terms of legislation is an ordinance authorizing the township to issue the refunding bonds. And prior to that, the administration will work with the underwriter, bond counsel, and CARFAC on putting together the structure of those refunding bonds and the different options available to us. So you'll see that coming shortly.
Okay, thank you. Kevin?
All right, the next item on the agenda is ordinance 2012-17, adopting the revised investment policy, amending Chapter 44 of the Administrative Code. And to be clear, we've had a discussion. The way this is worded is it now says swapations are contrary to our investment policy. So I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Any commissioner comment on this? Any staff comment? Any public comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0.
That's it for finance and audit.
All right. Do we have anything for library? Commissioner Higgins.
Nothing on library tonight.
And for public health, Commissioner Nagel.
Nothing for tonight.
Any old business? Any new business? Any?
I would like to mention that I had told some constituents that we would have an ordinance tonight addressing, feline cat problems in the township. And Elaine, I believe that ordinance has been moved out of our Board of Health's jurisdiction and is going to come to our board, but can you give us an idea? Will that be on the agenda at the next meeting?
Yes, it will be on the agenda. It has moved through Board of Health. It's had quite a few changes, and it'll be posted on the web, the week before, the Friday before our meeting.
Okay, good. Thank you.
All right. Any public participation? No public participation. And who would like to move that we adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
All right. See, that wasn't that bad. 10:30 is not that bad.
You see the second.